Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode here at the Damage Report. Today, of course, is Thursday, and you have launched into this episode having no clue who's gonna be joining me as co-host. Well, we've got a surprise for you. The Galaxy Brain himself, Ben Carollo, joins us. Ben, welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you here. So, a lot of people are watching the show on Twitch, almost certainly familiar with your program, which has been a part of TYT now for a little bit. But for those who might not be familiar with your work, tell us a little bit about your show. What are some of the things that you like to cover? What do you consider sort of like your news beat?
Yeah, most definitely. And so on Galaxy Brain, I really like to lean into the title and pick a few topics and really dive into them deep. Like with the housing crisis, we talked about like different policies that people could push for and the difference between those, and like how to talk to city council members along those lines. And then specifically like how does the relationship between a landlord and a tenant like affect things, and how is that different under a housing cooperative? So we really just deep dive into like the general theory surrounding an issue and get a little bit meta in talking about things from a more conceptual level so that people have a framework to understand news when they take it in.
Awesome. And we were talking before the show, and I learned that you said you had a master's in biosecurity and bioethics, was it?
Yeah, biosecurity and biodefense. Yeah,
biodefense. Oh, even more appropriate for the time. So that is both awesome considering the time we're in, but also, do you find yourself worried that that entire field might not exist anymore since it's now considered sort of partisan to think we should have any security or put up any defense against these things?
Yeah, so basically we have more of the same right now, but more of the same, but like the volume has been turned up to like 1,000, right? Where I remember like in the first couple of years of grad school, like watching lectures and conferences and all these things where they're talking about, hey, we need to be ready for a coronavirus pandemic. We need to invest in global public health, right?
They said specifically a coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah, oh yeah, most definitely. I mean, like our eyes have been on coronaviruses for decades, right? Like things like the EcoHealth Alliance where, like for example, the Wuhan laboratory that everybody likes freaking out about, there were American scientists working in that lab, right? And it's because we had like decades-long partnership with scientists and doctors in Vietnam and Laos and China, all over Southeast Asia. There's a few in the Middle East and a few in Central Africa as well, where it's this big global partnership. And we've been looking for new coronaviruses for a long time because ever since SARS-1 happened, it's just been on our radar. It's one of the reasons why the vaccine rolled out so quickly is because they'd already been trying to develop a general purpose vaccine for a decade. And so, but we're seeing more of the same where like a couple years ago, I was watching panels where they're talking about, we keep going to Washington saying we need global public health, not just public health in the United States, saying we need to fund local public health departments so that we can do contact tracing if we need to, all of these things. And they're not doing it, right? And they're talking about even Obama really didn't fund public health the way it needed to be funded. The funding had stagnated. And now it's just turned up to like 1,000 times that, where it's just, oh no, it's all this George Soros conspiracy theory to microchip everybody and give us all 5G. And it's so yeah, public health is terrifyingly depressing of a field now.
I can imagine. Was your master's program paid for by Soros, or was it Bill Gates that funded you going into that? Anyway, yeah, we live in a ridiculous time, but we are gonna be talking about the pandemic today, so you'll be able to bring hopefully a little bit of your expertise to that. But anyway, the show is Galaxy Brain, and so everyone should definitely stay tuned for that. But Ben, we're very excited to have you on the program, so thank you for joining us. For all of you watching, thank you for being here, regardless of what platform you're on. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button if that exists on this platform, or sharing the stream otherwise, we would love for you to do that, to give unto the algorithmic gods that which they desire. And through the next 90 minutes or so, we're gonna be talking about heat waves and fires. We're gonna be talking about the pandemic, a tale of 3 different states actually. Why is it so much worse in 2 out of the 3 than the other? We're gonna see if we can learn any lessons. We're also gonna be talking about cybersecurity and when a conference devoted to it falls apart, so that'll be fun. Rand Paul has been caught hiding what I believe is clearly corrupt stock activity. That's considered controversial, I guess. And one of the stories I'm most excited for today these right-wing textbooks, what they are saying about topics as broad as evolution, slavery, the Civil War. We're gonna really get into it and figure out what people are being taught in thousands of schools around the country. But that said, Ben, are you ready to launch into some news?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay, let's do this. The Pacific Northwest is now on the brink of another multi-day heat wave. As you're watching this, if you're in that area, you might be experiencing it too. In the worst case scenario that's been projected, temperatures could reach as high as 111 degrees Fahrenheit in some parts of Western Oregon by Friday before a weekend cool down. It might not get that bad, but it is still going to be very rough. So bad that these would actually be record-breaking numbers for the region if those records hadn't already been shattered a short time ago during the heat dome of not that many weeks before. And when you look at those numbers, when you see 111 degrees Fahrenheit, you might think, well, I live in Arizona. There's been some heat. I live in California. It gets hot here too. But it's not necessarily the same thing. Tyler Kranz is a meteorologist who responded to these arguments saying, we'll often hear people say, who cares if it's 106 or 108? It gets us hot in Arizona all the time. Well, people in Arizona have air conditioning. And here in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of people don't. You can't really compare us to the desert Southwest. Now, because there's so little ability on the individual level in people's homes to deal with heat of this magnitude, the governor, Kate Brown, has declared a state of emergency over the heat, activated an emergency operations center, citing the potential for disruptions to the power grid and transportation. City and county governments are opening cooling centers and misting stations in public buildings, extending public library hours, and waiving bus fare for those headed to cooling centers. So we're gonna go a little bit broad on this in just a little bit, but I wanted to give you a chance to get in, Ben. We don't know if the heat wave is gonna be as bad as the last one. It's looking like it might not be, but what are your thoughts about the current state of things?
Yeah, this is one of those areas of climate change that I think when people think climate change, they think like deadly hurricanes, they think extreme like flooding and stuff like that. But the two most deadly things from climate change are air pollution and heat waves, where what they do is they take people who are already at risk, right? People with disabilities, people who are elderly, and children who are sensitive to things like heat and air quality, and puts them in a position where a lot of them end up dying because of extreme heat, because of poor air quality and things like that. And you get these mass populations of people who are suffering extreme health effects. And especially in the middle of a homelessness crisis here in the United States, it puts us in an even more difficult situation. And during a pandemic, I mean, how many hospital beds are open for people who, are suffering from like a heat stroke or something? We're really just put at the brink right now. And ultimately, we don't have the systems of support in place that we really need. And there's not, to make matters worse, I bet air conditioners have probably gone up in price over the past 3 months in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, and we report on like these crises when they hit, but as with so many other topics, I have this sinking feeling that next year's not gonna be better. It's been going around like memes like, it's the hottest summer ever, enjoy it. It's the coolest summer for the rest of your life. Like that's the sort of thing that we're really looking forward to here. And because we're on the brink of this heat wave, I wanted to go back to the last one, which we talked about quite a few times here on the damage report. It turns out that it is likely that more people died here in the United States than was expected. When you do an analysis of excess deaths in 2 different states, in Washington and Oregon, you can take a look here, the spikes that hit during the heat wave. Now, some of the past big spikes were caused by things like COVID, sort of understandably. But something like 600 more people than expected died in those 2 states during the heat wave. That is 3 times higher than the official state counts of heat-related deaths. So officially on the record, a couple hundred people died. It's a massive tragedy, but it could actually be much worse than that. Now we're hoping that this heat wave won't be as bad as that one, but this is really just the beginning. I mean, we're focusing on the Pacific Northwest because you don't expect the heat there, but as Ben is pointing out, this is everywhere. Arizona was massively hit by heat. In California, we had it too. It's really difficult to escape it. Any other thoughts, Ben?
Yeah, I think like the one thought, I'll take us a step further in terms of doomering, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic right now of coronavirus, but one of the things that changes when you have changing climate is changing patterns of things like mosquito populations, right? And they change where they are. And there's some pretty nasty bugs out there like dengue fever, for example, that could very easily make their way to the United States and become endemic here. As these patterns change with weather, so too these patterns of mosquito populations change. And that could lead to new pandemics of things that have been floating around in the global south for a while. And they might just find their way here in the United States and put us even further past the brink that we're already at.
Yeah, and unfortunately, if we are hit by things like that, we've already demonstrated as a society that we're not willing to do what's necessary to protect ourselves. So that's exciting. Can't wait for the murder hornets to return. Yeah, so look, I hope that the Pacific Northwest gets through this. It seems like the government is a little bit more prepared for it this time, but buckle up, because just like the wildfires in California, this is not a one-time thing that we just have to sort of, give a stiff upper lip and get through. It is now the new normal. But let's go a little bit broader. The week started off with the IPCC report, making clear that we're at code red conditions for climate change. And that was serious news for like 5 hours. And now nobody's talking about it anymore. I mean, it's only apocalyptic. It gets pushed out. I understand a lot of news every day. It's hard to stay focused on one thing. So what is some of the news that might have pushed the IPCC report off of the front pages? Well, it might be things like this. Italy may have hit Europe's hottest day on record ever as the anticyclone Lucifer, which sounds like it's from a fantasy novel, is sweeping in. So yes, Italy hit 119.8 degrees. Just Italy, that hot. Okay, but maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was that Siberia's wildfires are bigger than all of the world's other blazes combined, which is pretty crazy because there's a lot of fires. California is riddled with fire right now. I think they said in British Columbia, they were fighting between 300 and 500 blazes simultaneously. Greece, an entire island basically swept by flame. You might have seen the videos going viral of people fleeing to the water as the flames came in through a port in Europe. Maybe it's the news of records being broken, like for the first time in recorded history, smoke from wildfires reached the North Pole. We did it, everybody. We finally did it. And of course, that's not even to get into the fact that you've got deadly widespread wildfires in places as disparate as Turkey and Algeria, by the way. There's concerns about fires breaking out in Spain and Portugal. In Tunisia, a temperature record has broken as well. So, we talk about the Mediterranean, like that's sort of a climate. We think of the Mediterranean climate. Well, on both sides of it, it might be changing irreparably. Ben, what do you think about this? The world is on fire.
I mean, oh my goodness. It's mind blowing that we haven't done more, right? It's mind blowing, like for example, California is still depending on literal prison labor to put out fires, right? Why? Literally, a town called Paradise literally burned down, and that wasn't a metaphor enough for people to get through their heads that maybe we should be scaling up our emergency preparedness. Maybe we should not pretend like these things aren't going to keep happening, right? It's literally just like the pandemic that's happening now. We didn't do any preparedness in advance, and now look where we are. And now we're seeing these disasters come every couple weeks instead of every couple years. And they're still not putting in place what needs to be done in terms of like disaster preparedness and disaster response. And I'm terrified to see what the next 20 years look like when you see potentially significant areas within like Florida and Louisiana being permanently underwater.
Yeah.
It's just like, because we need to be building like housing for that now, right? The flood insurance program should have a relocation program to move people away from the coast, but we don't have programs like that, right? We're not doing enough to stop these forest fires, and we're not doing enough to like even just respond to like air quality, right? Like the government should have an information program to tell people to get like air filters for their homes. Ben,
you raise a great point. If only we were in a time, a once in a half century period, where we are actually talking about infrastructure here in the United States, where we could put a bunch of funding into it. That would be great. I wish that we had that, but unfortunately, no. Yeah, you're totally right. We should be doing something, but we unfortunately, like it's very much like the pandemic, like the comparison you made. One would think, okay, people are being resistant to the lockdowns and the masks, but surely once it gets bad enough, they'll wake up. But have they? I don't know. I saw Matt Walsh tweeted something that honestly echoes what some like Sean Hannity was saying like a year ago. He's like, you know what? Yeah, you're gonna die someday. Just give up, lay down. He didn't say that last part. Just give up, lay down, let it into your lungs. I just saw before we went live, Marjorie Greene had a video. She was like, sure, the hospitals are packed with COVID, but they're packed with other things. We all die. So it's not like there was some hurdle that we had to pass and now we're ready to take it seriously. They went from deny to lay down and die. And I'm very worried that if we ever get past the denial and the just ignoring it, which we're seeing in climate change, that we'll be ready to just lie down, just lay down on the beach and let the rising ocean wash your body away. I worry, Ben, that will be the response of a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, literally, look at what happened during Hurricane Katrina, where they literally put police on the bridge to stop people from fleeing the poor neighborhood that was flooded to go to the rich neighborhood where there was higher ground. Yeah. It literally sums up to their policy is, how dare you poors demand anything more than the miserable life and the gruel that Jeff Bezos is willing to give you?
Yeah, it's harsh, but that's reality, unfortunately. I know everybody tunes into the damage report for positive news, but for the first time ever, we don't have it. This is the most depressing episode in our first season. Anyway, okay, we do have to take a break though, but we're gonna respond to a few of your comments. When we come back, we're gonna be talking about COVID. Why are some states doing so much better than other states? The answers will not shock you after this. Okay, everybody, thank you for being here. Let's see what's going on out there in the audience. Suspicious Pergola has a great name. Says Scotland investigating Trump properties for money laundering. I had no idea the deep state had infiltrated other governments beside our own. That's how deep it is. The countries themselves are just tentacles coming off of the beast. Ben, did you see this? That he's like apparently thrown bunches of money into it that don't make sense. I haven't really been following it. I'm just numb to all the Trump financial stuff, but what do you think?
No, I honestly, like, Trump hasn't really entered my mind much aside from the occasional remembering of like, oh wait, he literally tried to do a coup and like we haven't done anything about it. That is the only thought about Trump I've had in the past like 8 months.
Yeah. I'm sure it'll be fine. Historically, when you let people off with you get one coup free, it works out like super well. Democracies don't fall or anything. Schwarzenegger says, I'm so happy I was able to catch this on live instead of later. YouTube's ads are atrocious lately. Watching one of your videos, then I run a Tucker ad from PragerU that ruined my mood. I know, it's like, honestly, when we get PragerU, it's like, at least it's not that, what's the name of the thing that's backed by some Chinese corporation? It's like super right wing, Epoch Times or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Take your pick. You get one of those two on TYT videos. We have no control. I wish that we did, but unfortunately we do not. Arthur Ashbrook says, John, you really have to update the intro. I know, I haven't updated it in like 2 years. I don't know that I can find the template, but I will look into it. Anyway, Canada Dragon says, I discovered TDR before TYT, then started watching you on Wednesdays with Anna, who is amazing. Now I don't miss a show. The entire TYT family has inspired me to run for Congress and make change in my own district. Can I be candidate, Dragon? You can, actually. What district is it, Candidate Dragon? I'd be very curious to find out. I'm getting comments. Wait, who is posting this in my chat? It might be Marissa saying, yeah, tenders are the easiest to eat, no hassle with the bones. So I didn't realize what sort of firestorm I was setting off on social media when I posted this poll on Twitter. More than 10,000 people have responded to the tenders or wings thing, as well as many angry vegetarians and vegans, which I get. Ben, there's these 3 sides. Which do you come out on?
Okay, well, first and foremost, we do have to acknowledge that from a moral standpoint, the vegetarians and the vegans are correct. So that aside,
I grant you that.
tenders are obviously the superior form. Who wants bones, right? And you get like random like gristle and like whatever. Like that's so inconvenient. I just want to stuff chicken nuggets into my face. I don't want bones.
I don't understand it. Like it's like the cool thing about wings is bones. Who's like, I love this fish. Got bones. Who's eating like a chicken sandwich and thinks this should have like a fine mesh of stainless steel in it? Why do you want inedible things in your food?
Do those people like not take the tails off their shrimp and they just like
just eat the whole thing? And don't get me started on, I really hate it when like shrimp in, I don't know, like soups and stuff like that has the tail. I know it's a flavor thing, but it's really weird. Anyway, it's like, this is good peanut butter and jelly. Need some glass shards. Anyway, but that poll is up on Twitter if people want to vote. Grandma Sunshine Dragon says, lived on the Oregon coast 30+ years ago in a trailer. We were surrounded by trees, so shaded. About 1 week of the year was in the 90s. We didn't need an AC. We've been wanting to go back, but love to TDR and dragons. Yeah, I get it. When I was on Svalbard, someone told me about what the mountains used to look like when they were younger, how snow-capped they used to be, and now it's just brown. It's really sad. The world's changing. Anyway, we'll get to more comments later on, but there is a lot more news to get to, so we will be back in just a sec. Okay, everybody, before we jump back into the news, let me give you an idea of some of the things that are coming up on TYT. First of all, as always, immediately following the damage report, Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richie will be going live both on Twitch and at youtube.com/Indisputable TYT with co-host today, Wosny Lambre. Very exciting stuff. You're definitely gonna wanna watch that. I believe right after that, you've got reactions with Ravana at twitch.tv/TYT. So basically just buckle up, hold on to your butts on Twitch because you're not going nowhere. But anyway, then the main show will be going on. There's a lot of exciting stuff there. Also, TYT Sports, Ricky Strom goes live every Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. Pacific time at youtube.com/TYT Sports. He talks about, well, sports, that's true, but also politics and gaming and does a bunch of other stuff besides. So with that though, why don't we jump back into what's going on around the country? Obviously, throughout the United States, COVID is a major and growing problem, but it is not growing at the same rates everywhere, not even when you just focus on a few of the biggest states. So here we want to talk about California, Texas, and Florida, 3 states that have each at different periods had horrendous increases in COVID cases, hospitalizations, and deaths. But so far, at least, that is not really the case. Not all 3 are being hit in the same way during this most recent Delta variant fueled surge. California is reporting 141.1 new coronavirus cases for every 100,000 residents over the past week, a rate half that of Texas at 297.8, and less than 1/4 of Florida, which is above 650 cases per 100,000. California's rate is also less than the national average, by the way, of 232, despite being a city with some very large packed, a state with some very large packed cities, travelers, tourism, and all of that. So let's focus on where it's going wrong. The flood of COVID-19 patients newly admitted to Florida hospitals is now far worse than at any point during its winter surge, the so-called dark winter. Well, we got a dark summer for you. In January, Florida was reporting more than 1,150 new COVID patients every day, but now it's over 2,071 hospital admissions. And when you take a look at these 3 states, when it comes to daily admissions to hospitals, there's a big gap between them. With California below 2 per 100,000, a little bit more than twice as many as Florida, but in Texas, Florida is at 5 times the rate. And Texas is doing much better in that metric, but overall, if you look at their cases, let's bring up the Texas cases, it is getting back up into where it was at in November leading into December, despite the fact that we've had a vaccine now for more than 6 months. So we're gonna get into some of the potential explanations, but Ben, what do you make of how different the situation is in these 3 different sort of spots across the United States?
I am gonna go out on a limb here. I know it's a very radical limb, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that the prevalence of anti-mask, anti-vax Republicans is probably playing a significant role in what's going on in Florida and Texas. It's almost like, I know.
Crazy, Ben.
Very, very wild take, out on a limb. It's almost like the vaccine reduces the rate of infection and the spread, and it's almost like the masks also reduce the rate of infection and spread. I mean, I might just have a master's degree in biosecurity and biodefense, but that's my wild guess. Very uneducated, simple guess.
Well, look, if I've learned anything from following the media for the past 10 years, it's that the more someone knows, the less you should trust them. I don't trust those people with book learning or any other kind of learning. So let's look at the evidence and see if you might be right. Well, first of all, we're gonna look at a couple different explanations. One is vaccination rate. So my gut would say that California probably is more vaccinated than Texas or Florida. So let's look at the rates. California, the fully vaxxed rate is at 63%. 77.5% have received at least one shot. So Florida is less vaxxed, although perhaps not as big of a gap as you might think. 6 points less in fully vaccinated. It's looking like closer to 8 points in partially vaccinated. Texas, which is doing better than Florida in some metrics, is again less vaxxed than even Florida at 53.7% fully vaxxed, 64.3% partially vaxxed. So there are gaps, certainly. They're not massive gaps. And so that's when you get into the other measures, other than just vaccination. California has urged all residents, even those who are fully vaccinated, to wear masks indoors while in public, and is requiring them in K-12 schools. The governors of Texas and Florida, on the other hand, have largely banned schools and municipal governors from instituting such mandates, though some local leaders have defied those orders. So it turns out that your wild gamble of a guess, Ben, probably is true. Not only have they not done what California has done, which is mandating it, they are banning local governments from banning it. Isn't that crazy? Now, like that seems to be maybe falling apart in Texas. There's some court stuff going on right now, and a couple different areas, both in Dallas and down in the Rio Grande Valley, are starting to fight back against that. But it almost seemed as if they were like taking the side of COVID once again, wanting to make sure that it gets its claws in as deep as it can.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the most important thing that people understand when it comes to pandemics and vaccines and the mask wearing is that it is a probability game, right? It is literally a probability game, and there's whole fancy mathematical models that they do to like do this. They do a lot of agent-based modeling, if you know what that is. It's really fun. But basically, the most important number is what are the chances that a person who is spreading coronavirus bumps into somebody who is susceptible to the coronavirus, right? And susceptibility has its own percent chance. And so vaccinations and masks are both numbers to reduce that. And even like a 10% difference in vaccination rates can lead to wildly different rates in the amount of spread, because there's a lot of non-linear scaling in terms of vaccines, mask wearing, and the actual spread of coronavirus.
You're starting to sound like Dr. Fauci, and it's making me very angry, actually. But no, that's why we're glad we have you with your expertise, and you're obviously totally right, and we're seeing that play out in cases and hospitalizations and deaths. Which, like every time I post about COVID, I get at least one or two lizard brains who will respond with, "Yeah, what about the deaths?" And I'll point out that they've like doubled in the past 2 weeks, and it's absolutely dreadful to be losing 500 or 600 people per day. But then I also know, like, were these people taking COVID seriously when 3,000 people were dying per day? I doubt it. I don't think that they actually care. It's just a talking point. And so, look, there is still potentially time in Texas and Florida to start to take this more seriously. Not even to mention, Missouri, Mississippi, places that are really hard hit. There is time. You change the behavior, you will change the outcome when it comes to the coronavirus. We are still relatively early on in this wave. Some of the eventual deaths are probably baked in, because there's a gap, an average of, I believe, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, like close to 30 days between someone becoming infected and when generally they die of the coronavirus, if they're going to die. But I don't see huge behavior changes in these states. And when I say behavior changes, I don't mean, reports in Florida of refrigerated trucks being ordered so they can store more bodies, or, really local level things. Like here, you can see in Mississippi, Nick Judd posted, they're setting up once again a concrete garage overflow center for storing patients, which we saw, at the height of the pandemic last year. So I don't know. Ben, prediction time, I guess. Do you think that Florida and Texas are going to take it more seriously if the cases continue to go up the way that they are?
I don't think so. I mean, like honestly, like I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is basically what the Republican Party is going to do. They're just going to say, just deal with it, just get over it, just accept it. I mean, especially in terms of like our for-profit healthcare system. I mean, there were hospitals that literally shut down last year because it wasn't profitable to treat COVID patients. It wasn't profitable enough, right? They weren't doing enough like surgeries and whatnot. And so like that's our system, right? That's our system, shutting down hospitals in the middle of a pandemic because their magic line didn't go up. I don't think I might just be doomering out, but I don't think they're gonna change what they're doing.
Yeah, I've become increasingly pessimistic throughout this pandemic. We will see. We will see. I'm going to play a video in a second though, which is not necessarily going to lead to a lot of hope or optimism in the audience, but it is. You need to understand what's going on. So we're gonna go to that. Can we get that photo we just went to again ready again? I want to incorporate that in this. One of the reasons that it is so devastating that COVID cases are rising so rapidly and the hospitalizations are rising so rapidly is that our public health system, the actual people who make up it, have had a devastating year and a half. Many of them at or past the breaking point. And so when you see things like, if we can put up the photo again, the fact that nurses and doctors are going to be treating COVID patients in garages again, it's not that surprising to find out that some of them are just ready to be done with this whole thing. And so I want to show you a bit of an interview I saw with a nurse in Mississippi about their experience. So let's go to that.
Wearing our masks and doing what we need to do. We're tired. Nurses are so tired. It's getting to the point where we need help. We've been helping as much as we can, and we need help from, our community. I respect everybody's choice to get vaccinated or not, but when it comes down to it, it's going to just continue to get worse, and it's going to get to the point where it affects our kids. We are. That's my biggest fear. People aren't doing what they need to do to protect us, and we're human. We're not robots. We're not machines. We can't continue to do this forever at this capacity.
You're a nurse on the ICU floor right now, but you're not going to be.
No, I can't do this anymore. I've seen more death than I ever thought that I would see in my entire life. It's heartbreaking in every way. I don't even know how to describe it. It's overwhelming.
So that is a nurse who has been dealing with this every day, who went to the field knowing that she was going to see a lot of death, a lot of suffering. I mean, she works in an ICU, it's sort of expected. And she has been broken by this experience, at least in terms of the ability to continue doing it on a daily basis. And we can just, sort of hope that she's an outlier, that there will always be doctors, there will always be nurses. But we're finding out in a lot of places already that is not the case. Texas, I don't know if you saw this, Ben, Texas is having to import doctors from other states because they can't actually treat all of the patients that they have. Now that may be sustainable for a little bit, that we can just take doctors from one state, send them to Texas. But what about when those states need their doctors? Think about the dominoes as they fall when it comes to that. So what did you think about that video?
Yeah, I mean, seriously, like this is where it all comes to planning, right? This is where it all comes to planning. I mean, 6 months into this pandemic, we basically knew, and I mean, honestly, anybody who really knew what they were talking about, anybody that's like an epidemiologist that studied coronavirus even a little bit knew that basically after 6 months, it's pretty much guaranteed that coronavirus is gonna mutate to the point where we're always racing against coronavirus. And even if we rolled out a vaccine, it still wouldn't have done enough, and we're dealing with it right now with vaccine resistant strains. It's going to become like cyclical, like the flu, not necessarily seasonal with like a regular cycle, but it's going to like mutate so that we're always struggling against it. What should have happened? The response should have been rapidly training people to augment nurses and medical staff, right? Maybe that means like pulling people out of like active duty or the National Guard, training them how to do like intubation and like basic like treatment for COVID patients. Maybe it means like doing rapid training programs for people, doing like associate's degrees or like, entry level like nursing degrees and stuff like that. Like just ramming people through those programs so they can help augment people in hospitals. That is what should have been done. None of that has really been done. And we're just working people to death. We're working people to death, literally, as like even nurses and doctors are keeling over from coronavirus because they're dealing with coronavirus patients every day.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that would have been a great idea. Add that to the long list of things that we could have and should have done in that first year that we didn't, because we had not the best leadership, but we had a complete lack of leadership during the greatest time of domestic crisis in our lives here. I don't know if something like what you just laid out is being done under Biden. I hope that it is, because this isn't going away anytime soon. Now that said, let's turn very briefly to one more topic. This is something that got touched on a little bit during the first 6 months or so of the pandemic, but there's more evidence now, and I want to make sure that it gets out there because we're doing sort of like the fire hose method of trying to get people vaccinated. I will use literally every possible technique. So let's talk about this now. If you aren't worried about what COVID might do to your lungs, to your heart, the long-term effects of long COVID when it comes to your senses and those sorts of things, well, I will remind you that there is increasing evidence that it could do some devastating damage to your junk. A study published in May demonstrated the presence of the COVID-19 virus in the penis long after the initial infection in humans. More to the point, the penile tissue of the COVID patients examined in the study showed evidence of vascular damage. Perhaps not a surprise given the disease's well-documented effects on the vascular system elsewhere in the body. So it is, to some extent at least, chewing up the penis. Does that sound great? No, I don't think so. Well, vaccines are free, usually freely available here in the United States. Feel free to go get it. But let's give you some more information. Another paper published in March finds some very preliminary evidence that impotence is much more widespread among male COVID survivors than among men with no COVID history. Among the healthy controls, just 9% reported erectile problems, but the rate among COVID patients was roughly 3 times as high, with over a quarter saying they had trouble getting and or keeping erections. Now, we're gonna go to a visualization. If there was a different one, I'd use it, but this is what they had available. So here's a shot of your odds, guys. Which do you want? There's a lot of issues baked into that visualization. And I have read that this is the same person who used to do visualizations for things like the Washington Post. I don't know what has gone wrong since then. But this is a serious problem. Long COVID affects the body in many different ways, possibly ways that we don't yet understand, but some seem like issues. So if your position is, I'm not gonna get vaccinated, I'm not gonna wear a mask, I'm not gonna socially distance because I'm a man, I love my toxic masculinity. Well, you can love it as long as you can keep it. We'll see how it works out for you. Ben, thoughts?
You'd like to think that this would really motivate people, but honestly, based on Ben Shapiro's response to recent Cardi B songs, I think that this might not be as big of a seller as you might think.
No. Maybe if we could get Cardi to do a rap about this, then Ben Shapiro would feel like he has to respond to it, because they cannot help but talk about these female rap artists that they say that they don't like or whatever. Maybe that would spread some awareness about this. And look, these are small studies with small samples. As anything having to do with erectile dysfunction, you're probably not gonna get thousands and thousands of men to take part in this necessarily, but the at least preliminary evidence is there. Again, you seem to be right. It doesn't seem like this is convincing a lot of people, but I will put it out there. Even if just a few guys do the thing that we've been reading about where they set up like secret appointments and then they never tell people they're vaccinated, if we can get through to a few people, then that might help. Any final thoughts, Ben?
No, I mean, hopefully people will get vaccinated, I guess.
I agree. Okay, we're gonna take our second break of the hour. When we come back, we're gonna be touching base with the Line 3 pipeline protests, and then getting into some of the potential consequences that might be coming Rand Paul's way after this. Okay, let's see what's going on out there. In the super chats, Kenny from Philly says, welcome Ben. I nominate Ben as our Brainiac Dragon. That's an idea for a name, but Ben gets to choose everybody. Let's be welcoming. Anyway, Randall Flagg says, a bit of sarcasm here, but just as Texas didn't build its infrastructure for cold weather, it sounds like the Northwest didn't build for hot weather. Yeah. And by the way, I'm glad that this individual brought up the situation that Texas had in the winter. I listened briefly to this absolutely inane thing from, I think it was Glenn Beck, about how not enough people, maybe it was one of the Fox guys, not enough people give credit to climate change for causing the winters to be more mild, as if that's the long-term effect of climate change. Everything's just more mild. It doesn't lead to extremes in every direction, come on. Absolute morons. Post says, will intro be updated for season 2? Stay tuned. We still have 750 more episodes of season 1, but we will see. Moondragon says, boneless wings for the win. I guess. Bandwagoner. Saren says, I love when the story is about the horrors of climate change, then the commercial is for gas companies. The same goes for high price of medicine followed by pharma ad. Yeah. If you're talking about our ads, again, we don't have any control over it whatsoever. I apologize if that happens. I don't think the gas companies are advertising on the damage report, but I'm not sure. N136TCM says, it's not that hard to get vaccinated, but done. Nice, thank you. You're horrible. Blue Knight says, I work in a small business in Houston and I'm the only person here wearing a mask. Every hour or so I'll walk around to spray Lysol in what's probably a futile attempt to keep them from getting sick. It might be, I mean, that's Houston. A lot of COVID in Texas. Thank you to Bassman and Kathy Harvey for becoming members on YouTube, much appreciated. Saren went on to say, nurses and medical workers are threatening to quit because Governor Inslee is requiring they have to be vaxxed. Yeah, Ben, we've read a number of stories of the last year about like medical workers being resistant to do this stuff. Are you surprised by that? I have to admit I was.
Honestly, no. Okay, like there's this whole problem. Okay, there's a whole problem with like general practice doctors where they think they're experts on everything, and a lot of people make the mistake. A lot of normal people make the mistake too of thinking that like a general practice doctor is going to be an expert in everything. But there's a reason why a virologist is different than a general practice doctor, and an epidemiologist is different than a general practice doctor. Like there's a reason they're different things. 90% of what a general practice doctor does is just point you to an expert who will tell you what's wrong with whatever particular thing you're dealing with. And so sometimes they maybe fall behind on the research and can get stuck in their own conspiracy theories. So that's not really terribly surprising.
So you're implying that my doctor might not be Dr. House in practice, actually. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, are you implying that an ophthalmologist like Rand Paul doesn't necessarily know everything there is to know about viruses?
I know, very shocking
radical stuff. This is radical stuff. We're gonna get in trouble. Okay, let's see. Over on Twitch, 11-month subscriber, Gaming a Dent Hitchhiking Dragon says, I can't be bothered with wings. With an edible to inedible ratio like that, they're just not worth it. Yeah, if like a Cinnabon was like 20% bark, I probably wouldn't eat so many Cinnabons, honestly. Like you have to use your time wisely. There was a hype train. Thank you to everybody who contributed to the hype train on Twitch. Much appreciated. We'll be calling out some of the specific people who've been donating subs and resubscribing in just a few, but we got to get back to the news. We'll see you in a few. I can see from the immediate responses in the chat, people do not like the image of eating bark. Anyway, before we get back into our next story, an unfortunate reminder, I know, but starting on Monday, the multicast of the Young Turks, which had previously been playing at youtube.com/The Damage Report, will no longer be going on. So you will have to go to youtube.com/The Young Turks to watch the live stream of the show. Reminder, it is freely available. You do not have to be a member, subscriber in any way to the network or to the channel or anything like that. It's available to everyone, but it will not be multi-streaming on the Damage Report's YouTube channel. So just a reminder, starting Monday, you still got the rest of the week, and then things will change at least for now. Okay, so with that, how much time do we have? You know what? I think we might be able to get in these two stories. I'm feeling optimistic. Let's jump into it. I want to give you some updated information about the Line 3 pipeline protests that we've talked about in the past. Now, we had shown in the past that some of the security force retaliation against those attempting to stop the construction of this pipeline has been incredibly rough, including the weaponization of helicopters to try to pelt people protesting with like gusts of sand and rocks and things like that. Well, it has continued to be rough. Not that long ago, back on the 30th of July, water protectors at Line 3 were subjected to pepper spray and rubber bullets during a series of arrests. And protesters who've been jailed have reported mistreatment from officers, such as lack of proper food, solitary confinement of people protesting a pipeline, and denial of medications. And this is not just a small number. More than 600 people have now been arrested or received citations of one form or another while participating in these protests. And all of it backed up by the company. So Enbridge is actually paying the salaries of the police officers who are brutalizing these protesters as part of a deal with the state. Take a look at this. The pipeline was approved in exchange for a promise that taxpayers would not have to foot the bill for policing the expected protests. Well, that's good. I mean, the state got so much out of that deal. But anyway, Ben, this has been going on for some time, and the tactics are as rough as we've come to expect with virtually any protests. The Black Lives Matter protests, the people trying to run down the coal workers protesting on the East Coast right now. What are your thoughts about this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many layers to this. I mean, first and foremost, you can see the lovely city behind me, Minneapolis. There are police officers from Minneapolis. There are police officers from Minneapolis that are going up there to participate in this. So literally from my own city, some of the people who are brutalizing protesters at George Floyd Square are the same people who are brutalizing these Line 3 protesters. And to make matters even worse, in order to build this pipeline, they're literally violating treaties and like plowing through indigenous land. And so there's a serious legal question, and I would argue to say that it is illegal for them to put the pipeline there without the consent of the tribal authorities in northern Minnesota. And that's what they're arguing in court. They're doing this so very much in my view illegally, where they're violating the treaty. They're going on land that's not theirs, paving through it and putting in place this pipeline. And then when a lot of indigenous folks are trying to like defend their land from having a pipeline driven through it, they're brutalized by police officers who are literally being paid by this private company. And it's really, really frustrating because I was just reading in a report, I didn't really go into detail, but Line 3 is already leaking before it's even finished. And that is a problem that they're contending with now. I know, very surprising.
No one could have seen it coming. No one. Yeah, it's absolutely absurd. So you got the violence. I was reading an article about some of the indigenous TikTokers who've been participating in the protest having their accounts taken down. TikTok implying that they've violated some sort of community standards. Many of the streamers saying, I have no idea what I supposedly did and they're not providing me any information. So it seems like this is an attempt to shut out the free flow of information not coming from Enbridge or from effectively the mercenaries, the hired mercenaries who are enforcing this area. I realize we've skipped to reactions. I want to give you some basic information in case this is the first that you're hearing about it. The Line 3 oil sands pipeline is a 1,097-mile crude oil pipeline extending from Edmonton in Alberta to Superior, Wisconsin. In the US, most of the pipeline's route is being built in Minnesota, where construction of Line 3 is replacing an existing 282-mile pipeline with a new 330-mile route. It crosses more than 200 water bodies and 75 miles of wetlands. Construction began in December of last year. Total project is 80% completed, with estimates it will reach final completion toward the end of 2021. And they are desperately trying to stop it with these ongoing protests. Unfortunately, while look, I think you make a great case as to its illegality, they have the backing of the administration, the same Biden administration that got some positive press, including from us, about coming out against other pipelines. It's a shell game, basically. It's like, oh wait, so people are really mad about Keystone XL or one of those. Well, we're not going to do that anymore. But now we're gonna turn over to this one. They just have to get that the oil sands out there.
Yeah, and it's a climate change double whammy too, because those wetlands, right? Like those peat bogs are some of the most efficient natural carbon sinks on the planet, right? Peat bogs are very, very effective carbon sinks. There's tons and tons of carbon that's like stored in there. And if you destroy those parts of the environment, typically that carbon will find its way into the atmosphere one way or another. One of those ways being fires, which are notoriously difficult to put out. Especially when you have oil pipelines leaking nasty chemicals into those bogs. So it's a climate change double whammy, right? You have the oil that's coming through the pipeline, and then you have the resulting climate impacts on what is a very, very effective natural carbon sink. Not to mention the pollution of the water. I mean, my understanding is that it literally crosses the Mississippi River. And that's a big deal, right? A lot of people, I get my water from the Mississippi, it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I get that you're worried about that. I don't think that anywhere like in the US, a government would allow people's drinking water to be contaminated in a way that's not safe. So I think that you're probably fine in that area. But yeah, and so look, the fact that the Biden administration is backing this, in addition to like they put out a call in the last couple of days for OPEC to increase their production of gas. Oh, I wonder why people aren't convinced that they have our back when it comes to climate change and aren't just going into this reconciliation process assuming that it's going to come out just great. Yeah, you like out of one corner of their mouth, they're saying that they take it seriously, they're going to follow the science. Out of the other, let's burn everything that we can burn while there's still time. Those are mixed messages that unfortunately will result in the destruction of our civilization. Okay, we have a little bit of time, so we're gonna jump into this one last story to close out the hour. Rand Paul has become just the most recent US politician to be embroiled in a scandal about their stock activity when we found out just yesterday that his wife bought stock in Gilead Sciences, which makes the antiviral drug known as remdesivir, which makes, it's used to treat COVID-19. I'm sure that you've heard about it. She bought back on February 26, 2020, before the threat from the coronavirus was fully understood by the public and before it was classified as a pandemic by the World Health Organization. So, of course, there is supposed to be disclosure of these stock purchases within a relatively constrained time of about a month. So that was February of last year. So I think that we've broken that. Yes, it's more than a month. In fact, it's a year and a half. But he just made a mistake, man. He thought that he had sent it in. And probably the fact that he didn't report it probably had nothing to do with the fact that Purdue and Loeffler last year were embroiled in this scandal about the purchasing of coronavirus sensitive stocks. And there was this big investigation that seems to have been very damaging to them. And after all, both ended up losing their reelection bids in Georgia. But yeah, he was potentially privy to sensitive information as a member of the Senate Health Committee. In January, they hosted Trump administration officials for a briefing on the coronavirus. I'm assuming that had no effect whatsoever. Anyway, we're gonna have a lot more details about what money might have been made, the actions that he took. But Ben, as I alluded to, this is just the most recent of any number of different instances where I think the public is right to worry that senators might be using the privileged information they have. What are your thoughts about this whole thing?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, especially so to me, it's especially telling because it's investing in a company that makes an antiviral. Because antivirals are A, notoriously difficult to make, and B, also usually like if you have something like influenza, right? They won't even give you an antiviral because the time that it would take for the antiviral to really be effective, usually you've already got past the infection. So if you're at the point where you need an antiviral, you're already at the point where you're like, oh snap, this is gonna be like a big thing. And it's probably gonna be an infection that lasts like a week or two and take a decent chunk of time to recover from. And so an antiviral really is like when you've got like very serious infections, usually as a general rule, it's not always true. But in this case, I feel like it's pretty telling because COVID is a pretty significant infection that leads to, like a couple weeks of being sick and potentially dying. And so to say, oh my goodness, this is something we might need an antiviral for is particularly significant in my humble opinion.
Yeah, well, to believe, what, this might be a big thing. We should get some of this stock in February. Overall, how would you characterize the way that Rand Paul has talked about COVID? Is he talking about it as a thing that's so serious that we might need some sort of emergency antiviral?
Well, no, of course not. And this is what they keep running this game where, they're literally not putting their money where their mouth is, right? They're getting vaccinated, they're being quiet about it. They're sheltering away in their mansions and they're like, oh, I'm not gonna go visit, those random people and get myself infected. And then they turn around and get on TV, and when they're on Fox News from their Zoom conference, they're saying, oh, don't worry, it's no big deal. And it's just this ridiculous lie where they're trying to gaslight people and say, no, there is no war in Ba Sing Se, right? There's no pandemic. Don't worry about it. Like it's nothing.
Yeah, and look, I don't personally believe that they should be able to own any individual stock at all. But at least if they were going to, having their corrupt privileged information lead to them purchasing stock in things that would pay off if we did well in the pandemic, theoretically bothers me less than investing in what will do well if we fail. Now, like if you random person watching this, if you purchase stuff like that, I get it. You don't have any control over the outcome, but he has been seemingly advocating for COVID for a year and a half. So if you also have a financial incentive for us to desperately need things when we fail, that really does bother me. But again, the overall issue is that they can buy individual stocks at all. And I know that some, including Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they've tried to get this outlawed, but so far we're not there, Ben. I get why it's difficult to get people to stop themselves a path to making money, but I don't understand why so many people tolerate the personal ownership. Any final thoughts?
I mean, literally, imagine if he was like investing in funeral homes, right? Like how grim would that be? Where it's like, oh, we're definitely not gonna do anything about this because look, think about how much money we could make with our funeral home investment here, Like it's really that scale. And I think people really need to understand that that is the scale that it's at.
I agree. Okay, we have very little time left. I'm assuming we have 30 seconds. Okay, so really fast, I saw a super chat from Lashana Clark who says, "OMG, John, have you forgotten about Flint, Michigan?" No, I was being sarcastic. That is exactly what I was referencing. Yes, they will poison your water freely. There's fracking chemicals and lead and all that. No, I'm right there with you, Lashana. Don't worry about that. But anyway, that is all we have, all the time that we have for our first hour. Thank you all of those watching on our linear platforms. But if you're watching on Twitch or on YouTube, we do have a bunch more stories. So we're gonna take a short break, couple of minutes, we'll come back, do some more after this. Welcome back, everyone. It's me, John, and Ben is here as well. Ben doing an amazing job. The reception has been great. People are loving. I noticed several references to the Avatar reference from earlier. So I assume you're quite excited about the casting information that just came out earlier today.
I will always be skeptical about any live Avatar. I feel like that. I feel like we've had a bad experience. We pretend it didn't happen, and we hope that any live Avatar: The Last Airbender remake is better.
I mean, how could it not be, right? Like, I mean, that would make me feel better. Like, I'm very excited for. Are you familiar with the Wheel of Time?
No, I haven't. But people were telling me about it earlier that I should chat with you about it.
Well, I'm very excited for a show that's coming out in November, but of course I'm worried about any, like long-standing novel series being made in a TV show. But at least a few years back, someone who owned the trademark, they had to put out something or else they'd lose it, or the copyright or whatever. I don't know that stuff. And so they made this like 30-minute thing that played in the middle of the night that was so dreadful that at the very least this will be an improvement on it. But anyway, we're very glad to have you here, and that goes to the audience as well. Thank you, all of you. I see your comments. I'm gonna read some of them. Jim says, is anyone thinking about the prices of real estate in the Northeast once the rest of the country is burning and everyone moves up here? Yeah, that's a good point. I'm sure it's getting hit in its own ways, but okay. Piz for Pink says, literally just found out my boyfriend tested positive for COVID while you were talking about the penis story. Sorry, it's still only a quarter. It's only a quarter. Anyway, let's see. She went on to say, we were both vaxxed in April. He's now positive. I'm fine, but I'm so sick of this insanity. Agreed. Denkar says, bark is bad to eat. So is the amount of rat and chicken feces allowed in processed foods. Yeah, I know. Anyway, Daniel says, they say bone-in taste better, but I just want chicken. I got other things to do than work for a bit of better taste. Tenders wins. I think so. There's slightly more wings people, but I think the tenders people are more super chatty about it. Virginia says, greetings from St. Paul, Brainiac Dragon. I also think that breaking the treaty is illegal, and of course, MPLS cops won't go. They get trouble up there. Yeah. Well, thank you. Tamson, I can't read that super chat, but thank you for it. Silent Partner Dragon hit tier 2 YouTube membership. Thank you. You get access to our weekly top 10 lists. For that. Okay, there's one other thing. Before we jump into the news, we're about to do it. But if Jess Ortega is in the audience, Jess sent in this awesome art, the Rainbow Dragon Squad. Very nice. At some point in the studio, we are going to have sort of like an art thing, and this will definitely be up there. So thank you to Jess for sending this. Okay, with that, Ben, you ready to talk about some insanity?
Yeah, most definitely.
Well, you say that. It's about Mike Pillow. Are you sure?
Is anybody ever really ready for that? Like,
I don't think he is. But anyway, let's talk about it. The cyber symposium put on by the purveyor of some of the worst expensive pillows you can buy online, Mike Lindell, is falling apart, and it's falling apart fast. I don't even know where to start. I guess the most substantive problem for Mike Lindell is that one of the cyber guys, his term, not mine, that he brought on that was supposed to help him prove that China had rigged the election against Donald Trump turned out not to actually believe that that was the case. So Mr. Lindell said that he had 37 terabytes of irrefutable evidence that hackers, who he said were backed by China, broke in, switched votes in favor of President Biden. He said that the proof is visible in intercepted network data or packet captures that were collected by hackers and could be unencrypted to reveal that a cyber attack occurred. But his cyber expert, Josh Merritt, who is on the team hired by him to interrogate the data, told the Washington Times that packet captures are unrecoverable in the data and that the data, as provided, cannot prove a cyber incursion by China. He was quoted as saying, so our team said, we're not going to say that this is legitimate if we don't have confidence in the information. And so, Ben, the most surprising thing to me is not that the data doesn't prove what Mike Lindell said, but that he hired an expert and the expert had the professional ethics that he wouldn't just lie about it. I thought any cyber guy he brought on would just tell him whatever he wants, but this guy actually cares he wants to go where the evidence leads, and it doesn't lead to China overthrowing the election.
I mean, at a certain point, it's not even about ethics. It's just about like getting a job anywhere else, right? Because could you imagine trying to get a job? You're like, oh, I did this analysis and it proved they're hacking. But anybody who looks at it would say, no, there's definitely not hacking here. So what are you talking about? You must be the absolute worst, cybersecurity guy in the history of the world. So nobody's ever going to hire you for anything. I think the big shocking part to me is that they actually realized that Hugo Chavez isn't alive anymore, because originally they were like, it was Hugo Chavez rigging the election from Venezuela. And like Hugo Chavez died like in like 2015, 2016 or something like that, And so that was I'm surprising to learn that they actually have changed their conspiracy theory now to at least seem more possible, despite obviously being ridiculous.
Yeah, things are developing fast and in a frantic way. So this was one of the most recent issues, the fact that Josh Merritt wouldn't back up his claims. It's not the first. The cyber symposium was originally delayed. He had been offering $5 million to any person who could disprove his claims, which presumably Josh Merritt can, I guess. So, but no, that offer is now no longer on the table. So Josh Merritt cannot have the $5 million, I guess. Originally, he had been displaying a video of scrolling incomprehensible text, which he claimed were the packet captures he had received. Proof he claimed that China was hacking the election. But apparently, according to a different cybersecurity expert, Lindell didn't have the actual data sets. The scrolling text was likely just meant to resemble what the packet captures might look like, and they were not the actual packet captures, which are unrecoverable. So he had presumably been lying about that. Shockingly, he wasn't being forthright with his audience. And so I don't know how much else needs to happen for his people to turn on him. How about this? A judge ruled against him in trying to dismiss a lawsuit today. And I don't know for sure what he was thinking when he found that out, but we believe we have it captured on video. Take a look at this.
Republican counties are being won by Trump, but by a much smaller number than projected. And then you have Philadelphia much closer and able to do its thing, because Rudy Giuliani will tell you Philadelphia is the kingpin of election fraud. But it wasn't possible without stuff like this.
Okay, so there in that video, you can see Mike Lindell rushing off stage around the same time the news broke of the judge. So either he was desperately trying to respond to his deteriorating legal situation, or the chimichanga hit. I don't know, but he had to get off that stage instantly. So Ben, there's a lot of issues here. Is this gonna do serious damage to this sort of area of the conspiracy theories? Rudy Giuliani has been sort of cast aside after looking like a buffoon. Is Mike Lindell having a Giuliani moment?
Yeah, I think the big thing is going to be Mike Lindell probably losing money in a lawsuit. Who knows how that will go? I'm going to go ahead and make a wild guess that hacker or that cybersecurity guy wanted that $5 million that Mike Lindell had promised, and that might be a new lawsuit that Mike Lindell has to worry about. And then, I mean, really, that moment really gave the same vibe as like a TV show where you've got the snake oil salesman that sees the sheriff approaching on the other side of the crowd and is like, oh, sorry, kids, I gotta go right now for some unrelated reason, don't worry.
And his whole shop just packs up into a briefcase for exactly those situations. Yeah, except it's just a pillow, so it's still kind of bulgy. Yeah, look, people should be able to see past this. In the pre-show, we were talking about the devolution thing. Have you heard about this? That no, you thought that Trump was going to come back into office. No. He actually, before he left, he took the powers of the United States, he gave it to a new government that he is now the head of. And this is what some former QAnon people with big followings are now saying.
No, I get it. It's a really good origin story for the Sith Lords, right? The original Sith Lord had to find an apprentice, and then they pass it on, and it makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh God. Anyway, okay. we're gonna move on to something that no, it doesn't make any sense either, but at least it's in a different category. So it'll be like a palate cleanser. Okay, let's launch right into this. If you're in school, you learn via textbooks or Wikipedia, but still a lot of textbooks. And for a long time in America, one of the big issues has been that textbooks are not written necessarily by the best minds. They tend to come out of very conservative states like Texas, most notably, and that colors the sorts of things that get taught and what doesn't get taught. But there, I'm mostly generally just talking about sort of normal political bias, which is terrible, and helps to erase a lot of the worst instances, in our history. But sometimes it goes even farther. So I want to show you the results of an analysis by The Guardian that's been looking into the sorts of books that are used in many private schools, so mainly Christian schools. They reviewed dozens of textbooks produced by the Christian textbook publishers Abeka, Bob Jones University Press, and the Accelerated Christian Education, three of the most popular textbook sources used in private schools throughout the US. So how popular? Well, with the first, they claim that 1 million Christian school students used them back in 2017. And the Accelerated Christian Education site says that tens of thousands of schools and homeschools in 140 different countries use their books. In fact, the HuffPost did an investigation back in 2017, and they found that at least 1/3 of all of the private voucher schools throughout the US use a curricula from one of the three sources that are gonna be cited here. And that isn't even getting into those who don't use the voucher program. So this is something that potentially is reaching thousands and thousands of different schools. So what are some of the things that you might be learning if these are the books that are used in a school that you go to? Well, one Accelerated Christian Education high school textbook says that, quote, "The end of slavery in this country was a legitimate goal, but much was done in the name of abolition that was as evil as the institution of slavery itself." It contains a section titled "Black Immigration," referring to slavery, which notes, quote, "Not all immigrants have come to America willingly." So let's pause there, Ben. That certainly has a spin on it. So much spin that it would be difficult to actually read the book. But to say that what was done in the cause of abolition was as evil as hundreds of years of slavery is a pretty bold claim.
The United States is the only society in the history of the world, and my undergraduate degree is in social sciences with a focus on anthropology. So if somebody can provide me an example, I might be wrong, but to my knowledge, the United States is the only society in the history of the world that has had literal human farms where people were sexually assaulted and forced to have children so that people would have more slaves. I don't think anything in the abolition movement adds up to anything like that. I think very few things do.
Oh, look, I want to believe you. You sound so persuasive, but you're not a textbook. And I read in a book that abolition was as evil. No, you're totally right. And the issue is that, like a 9-year-old, an 11-year-old is just going to accept it. They don't know about that. They're certainly not going to be taught in these books about the systematized rape and destruction of families and all of that. But it goes further. Here's a section from an Accelerated Christian Education textbook. Under radical Reconstruction, the South suffered. Great Southern leaders and much of the old aristocracy were unable to vote or hold office. The result was that state legislatures were filled with illiterate or incompetent men. Northerners who were eager to make money or gain power during the crisis rushed to the South. For all these reasons, Reconstruction led to graft and corruption and reckless spending. In retaliation, many Southerners formed secret organizations to protect themselves and their society from anarchy. Among these groups was the Ku Klux Klan, a clandestine group of white men who went forth at night dressed in white sheets and pointed white hoods. Wow. So Reconstruction was radical, and it took all of society's best, people who'd formerly served in the Confederates and slaveholders, things like that, filled the government with dummies who didn't believe that there should be slaves. And then because there was such anarchy, what else was there to be done but form domestic terror groups like the KKK? And again, Ben, a kid reading this probably this is the only information they've ever received about these topics. I worry that they are just going to soak it up. That's what they're going to believe is true.
Yeah, that's terrifying. That's literally terrifying because that is like a ridiculous way to like first like calling the elected because to be clear, there's like a lot of states in the South that had a bunch of newly elected black representatives who freed from slavery, went and got elected. And the KKK was literally one of many literal murder squads that would murder those people very publicly. And they also, right, if you want to talk about rigged elections in the United States, elections in the South up until, oh shoot, I think it was almost the 1940s or something like that, were notoriously rigged, where the the Klan would literally roll in and like steal ballot boxes, they would stuff ballots. There was notoriously a town where there were more votes cast than people, not just adults, but people, period, that lived in the town, right? There was a huge part of American history in the South. And like, if this is the only thing a kid is learning about it, like it is brain melting. This is literally brain melting.
Like, yeah, you're totally right about the effect on democracy. And then of course there's the race-based massacres. There was the wiping out of an entire town government that had elected black representatives. But no, it was necessary because they were worried about anarchy. And if anarchy is like not following the law, it kind of seems like a vigilante squad lynching people illegally isn't really defending against anarchy so much as causing it. But anyway, look, that is talking about things from a long time ago. And I believe we need to have an accurate understanding of our history, but we also need to have an accurate understanding about what's happening now. And unfortunately, the books are no better when it comes to that. So the Bob Jones World History textbook says, unfortunately, Americans' view of race relations declined after Obama came into office. Race riots in places such as Ferguson, Missouri, and Baltimore, Maryland greatly escalated racial tensions and worsened strife between minorities and local police. President Obama's attempts to resolve these problems often seem to make the situation worse. And Abeka says, groups such as Black Lives Matter sharpened the divide between police and citizen and black and white with divisive rhetoric. So, yeah, like whether it's the origin story of the KKK or protests that continue to this day, it is framing things in a way that makes those who are fighting for equity and justice, they were the ones that were anarchists, they were the ones that were divisive. If it's getting worse, it's because of them.
Yeah, I mean, and let's talk about recent, right, United States history, right? 40 years ago in the 80s. In the 80s is when sundown towns in the United States reached their peaks. If you don't know what a sundown town is, chat, a sundown town is a town where people of color were literally systematically either murdered or arrested simply for being in the town after sundown, hence its name. They reached their peak in the 80s, okay, in the 80s, right? 40 years ago. That means many of the people, okay, who are old enough to have written these textbooks were alive and very much likely in their adulthood at the time when these sundown towns were at their peak. Which means, to be very clear, they're very aware of it, and B, might have some sympathies for perhaps their cousins, brothers, uncles, whoever might have participated in that.
Yeah.
And that's like, those people are very much alive today.
Yeah, you're 100% right. Or like you tell a great story, I'll tell a different one. So some black Americans would venture into sundown towns, causing tension with local police. That's the way they would cover it in their school books. It's absolute madness. Now, very briefly, they do go even further back in history. So for instance, Accelerated Christian Education textbook, if you want to learn about early man, you can see as they snuck up on the wily Brontosaurus, wearing jeans and wielding swords. Okay, so there weren't men at the same time as dinosaurs. I think we all know that. And to the extent that there were like men eventually, jeans are more recent. I will say though, I was very disappointed because there is so little that is true in that image that I assumed, and I almost wanted it to be true, to be totally perfect. I was like, I bet you the Stegosaurus and the Brontosaurus are separated by like 100 million years, but no, they were concurrent. They got that one right. But that's the only thing in that image that's actually accurate, Ben.
Yeah, I do have a confession. Now that we're at the young Earth stuff, this is my confession. In high school, I went to a public school, but after school, I may or may not have been very religious and gone out of my way to do like after school religious classes that were very much like, and remember kids, harass your teachers and tell them that the world is 3,000 years old.
Oh God. Causing tension with local teachers. Anyway, okay, we're rapidly running out of time. We're gonna very quickly do a brief version of this last story, and then we're gonna have to call an end to the show. Sorry, director. Arnold Schwarzenegger has decided to lash out at those who are complaining about masks and vaccines and all of that. Take a look at this.
Oh, there is a virus here. It kills people. And the only way we prevent it is to get vaccinated, to wear masks, to do social distancing, washing your hands all the time, and not just to think about, well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom. Because with freedom comes obligations and responsibilities. We cannot just say, I have the right to do X, Y, and Z. When you affect other people, that is when it gets serious. It's like no different than a traffic light. We put a traffic light at an intersection so someone doesn't kill someone else by accident. So this is why we have a traffic light. You cannot say, no one is going to tell me that I'm going to stop here, that I have to stop at this traffic light here. I'm going to go right through it. Yeah, then you kill someone else, and then it is your doing. We have to come together rather than fighting and always just saying, this, according to my principles, this is a free country, and I'm going to have the freedom to wear no mask. Yeah, you have the freedom to wear no mask, but you know something? You're a schmuck for not wearing a mask.
Jeez, I didn't expect this. I didn't know that he'd be on our side. I mean, he was, after all, a Republican governor and all that, Ben. But you know, I'll take everyone on our side if we can. Maybe some conservative grew up liking his movies, the macho roles and all that, and might be convinced. Kind of doubt it. They are, after all, schmucks, I'm learning.
Yeah, in before the right wing starts circulating Terminator memes where he's like holding a syringe or something, like, I'm here to vaccinate you, right? Like, that's definitely the direction they're gonna go.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw recently, they were using those I am legend has, you know, vaccines turn people into zombies. The writer of that has had to strike back against it. But anyway, Schwarzenegger, thank you. We appreciate your service. Okay, that is unfortunately all the time we have. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Where and when can people watch Galaxy Brain?
Yeah, Galaxy Brain is gonna be on Twitch, on the Young Turks Twitch channel this Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern time, 3 o'clock Central. The other times for the other time zones. And it's gonna be a great time. It's gonna be a great time.
That's awesome. Really had fun with you on the show. I hope you have a good one.
Yep, you too.
And for all of you watching at home, reminder, multicasts end at the end of this week, starting Monday. They will not be going on. You'll have to watch at youtube.com/theyoungturks, but freely available, all that. Want to thank you for watching. The Community Garbage People of the Week poll is up on the community tab of the YouTube channel, so please go vote. I have heard this is one of the toughest choices we've had so far. There's a lot of garbage. And so we'll give you those results tomorrow when Brett joins me on the show. But until then, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.
Yep, you know what it is. Welcome to Indisputable. Good to be with you. We got a lot of show today. Ladies and gentlemen, breaking down news of the day, we got the big homie, Wosny Lumbre, host of Wosnia, 10 p.m. Eastern time Tuesdays, that's on Twitch. Also host of Woke Bros and writer for The Ringer. He will join me in just a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, my top news story for today. What if I told you that roughly 20 years ago, a Baltimore police officer shot and killed a 14-year-old kid? The department thought it was murder. They charged him with manslaughter. And then because of some legal maneuvering and the help of the union, this cop was allowed to remain a cop for 20 damn years, secretly, still getting paid with no gun and no arrest authority. Ladies and gentlemen, that is exactly what happened in Baltimore. Almost 20 years ago, a police officer named Edward Gorwell beat not only criminal charges, but administrative hearing charges as well. Edward Gorwell had shot and killed a teenager in 1993 and was charged with manslaughter. Years went by as the case wound through the court system and was dropped eventually by prosecutors in 1999. Let's put up a picture of this disgraced officer. There he is. He's been getting paid, and I've done the research. I know how much he's been getting paid. We'll talk about that in a minute. He's been getting paid even though the department and the justice system believed he committed murder, manslaughter, shooting a 14-year-old in the back. Here's some background to it. Gorwell joined the police department in 1990. In 1993, he fatally shot 14-year-old Samant D. Thomas in the back. The boy was fleeing from a stolen car in a densely wooded area at the edge of Gwynns Falls Park in West Baltimore. Gorwell said at the time, he heard a gunshot and then opened fire, hitting the running teen. No gun other than the cop's gun was found at the scene. So what do you have here? 20 years ago, 14-year-old kid running away. White male police officer shoots, kills the kid, and claims, hey, I thought I heard gunfire. No gun was ever found. He gets charged with manslaughter. He has to go to trial. His department, well, they believe he's dirty. They believe he did it. Let's put up another picture of this clown. I found this picture at a place where cops trade patches with one another. He has a patch account. His first trial in 1993 ended in a mistrial. Why did it end in a mistrial? Because one of the jurors failed to show up for deliberations. That's the only reason why. After a series of appeals that reached the US Supreme Court, Gorwell was scheduled for trial again in 1999. Keep that year in mind, 1999. They're trying to get this guy. They believe he committed manslaughter. They think he unlawfully shot a kid, a 14-year-old, in the back. 1999, trial happening again. What happens? 2 days before the trial date, just 2 days, ladies and gentlemen, a police crime lab technician magically decided to conduct a test for gunshot residue using new testing equipment which had been unavailable to police in 1993. The test revealed traces of gunshot residue from Thomas's left hand, being the kid. Police said at the time, even though no weapon was found at the scene, prosecutors then dropped the case on the morning of the scheduled trial. So years later, right before his next trial, the crime lab magically finds gunshot residue on the hand of the victim. There's more. In 2002, fearing that Gorwell might prevail in an administrative hearing, the department agreed to let him stay on the force at an officer's salary and eligible for a pension, but without police powers and without a gun. Why is that? Because they knew he was dirty as hell. But he can stay on the force. We'll just take away his gun. We'll take away his police powers. We'll let him keep drawing a salary. Taxpayers have been paying for this clown for decades. There's more. The Inspector General's office said in a report released Wednesday that it received a tip complaining about the arrangement, investigated and determined Gorwell's permanent suspension of his police powers made him eligible to be fired because he was unable to carry out his duties. Now I want you to see this, ladies and gentlemen. They are already reframing the discussion. I don't give a damn about him being fired. He's supposed to be in jail. He's supposed to be in prison. But now the conversation is about should he be employed or not. Over the last 5 years, Gorwell's salary rose from $83,800 to $92,500. The man got paid more money while he earned significant amounts of overtime each year, overtime between $28,000 and $35,000 annually. The Inspector General's office said Gorwell was paid $600,000 total over the past 5 years alone. What did this officer have to say? Now, he was allowed to resign. They still didn't even fire the guy. They let him resign. He said, and I quote on social media, "I have had the honor and pleasure of working with some of the greatest heroes on earth." Gorwell wrote on Facebook, this was August 1st. "To those who are still in the grind, stay true to yourself, stay safe, back each other up like they did for him, and join the club in your terms." No remorse, no guilty conscience, nothing. Baltimore, the system allowed for this to happen as well. Injustice all the way around, and that the conclusion of it is still a dead 14-year-old kid from 20 years ago who never got the justice he deserved. Big Waz, what are your thoughts about this?
You know, it's crazy that the guy so clearly did a poor, he was bad at his job, right? And so they come to the decision that he should no longer be on the streets, meaning he shouldn't be allowed to police people. He shouldn't be allowed to carry a badge and a gun. So it's like, obviously his incompetence is well known, so they take him off the street. But you know, the other thing that strikes me, Dr. Richie, is that generally we believe in, labor power, right? Except for in the case of police unions, man, these guys aren't protecting like paid sick leave and vacation pay and great health benefits and all of that. Basically, they're protecting these guys' rights to shoot people whenever the hell they want. 99.9% of labor unions, that's not what their function is, right? It's those things that I mentioned before. It's like keeping your job intact. Whereas the police, it feels like oftentimes all they serve to do is to justify abhorrent behavior by officers. We're not talking about, the livelihoods of people and making their jobs dignified work and places that are worthwhile showing up to and not being pushed around by their bosses and managers. The union just comes in and says, no, these guys should have the right to indiscriminately kill the citizens of the state. And it's sad, it's awful. And the fact that this guy is gonna collect a pension and that, he made 120 G's a year for the last 5 years to be an awful cop, right? Not to be great at his job, to suck at his job. That's just awful.
Yeah, and this is why people have a problem with the protections in policing. This makes no sense in any other profession other than policing. And at the center of this was obviously the police union. They're still to this day standing with that same guy. Let me shift gears. This is an extremely sad story, but this is the cause and effect reality of groups like QAnon. Authorities say Matthew Taylor Coleman confessed to murdering his 2 young children in Mexico because of a QAnon conspiracy. A California surfing school owner who was charged with killing his 2 children in Mexico is a follower of QAnon and Illuminati conspiracy theories, who thought the children, and I quote, were going to grow into monsters, so he had to kill them, according to the federal government. Let me put up a picture of what once was seemingly a happy family. This is tough. This is tough. Those children are dead. That wife, her world is completely upside down. Matthew Taylor Coleman, 40 years old, was charged Wednesday with foreign murder of US nationals in connection with the death of his 2-year-old son and his 10-month-old daughter. According to the US Attorney's Office for the Central District of California, authorities said Coleman confessed to the killings and told the FBI that he used a spear fishing gun to stab his children. Coleman's wife, identified only by her initials, contacted Santa Barbara police after her husband had taken the kids out on a Saturday, but didn't tell her where they were going. She grew concerned after he failed to respond to her messages. Her concern was well warranted. A judge ordered that Coleman be held without bond Wednesday and scheduled his arraignment for August 31st. According to the complaint, ladies and gentlemen, according to the complaint, Coleman said that he knew what he was doing was wrong. He knew it. But it was the only course of action that would save the world. The complaint says Coleman told authorities that he learned about serpent DNA through QAnon and Illuminati conspiracy theories. This is how dangerous this stuff is. This is how dangerous it is. This guy was a business owner on the social media profiles, seemingly a happy family, looked as if he cared for his children, and now another victim with other victims connected to QAnon conspiracy theories. QAnon is more recent. It has a more recent conspiracy theory premised on the belief that a similar global cabal at the top of the US government is secretly murdering and eating children, and that Donald Trump was quietly working to defeat them during his time in office. That is a current freaking conspiracy theory being promoted by QAnon members. Was tragic.
Yeah, there's nothing to say about the heinous and just horrific nature of the crimes against these young children. That's, anybody can recognize that this is a monstrosity, and it's horrible. And our hearts go out to the families of those victims, because they're gonna be dealing with something that I can't even imagine or begin to even try to imagine. But it does make me wonder about the kind of citizenry that we are fostering here in America, where people are susceptible to this type of stuff. We don't have an infrastructure or a system built to deal with mental health issues. We pay lip service to caring about that kind of stuff, but we don't have the system in place to deal with these vulnerable types of people. And I don't know, Dr. Richie, that we have evolved as a human being to deal with mass media and just the stuff that we deal with on the internet, right? I don't know if our brains are equipped to deal with this stuff. And also it makes me think about Russiagate. And I remember people complaining about the Russian interference. And what was the interference? They're telling people that Hillary Clinton eats babies and all. The fact that we have a citizenry that's susceptible to this type of stuff, I think that speaks more harshly of us than it would some Russian or any other foreign actor who could influence American citizens with junk, right? This isn't, say what the US government has done in places like Guatemala and Chile and Iran, where they literally overthrow through democratically elected governments, right? That's not that's not what the Russian interference was. It was just them putting out rumor and innuendo and people running with it. So I think it says a lot about the type of people we have that we're making here in America, that they're susceptible to just it's junk.
Yeah, and it's a cult-like where you are indoctrinated to a belief system contrary to what you were taught or understand as truth. And that's the thing about indoctrination. And typically it impacts individuals who are more mentally vulnerable than anyone else. But here's the reality of indoctrination. It causes you to not critically think about what you believe. That's what it does to you. And so you can start believing and adhering to a doctrine or to a philosophy completely contrary to what you've been taught, completely contrary to what you know, but you have been indoctrinated to believe something adverse of the facts. And here's the other part, and you made a great point here. Have we evolved enough for this kind of mass information and mass deceit? Because remember, there are still people thinking, let's be real, that Donald Trump is going to be appointed president. We don't even do that in America. That's not even in the Constitution. But there are people who really believe that the man will be appointed president of the United States by some mystical power, all right? I know it's different, but it's the same linear thinking. It is not rooted in anything fact worthy, but people believe it as truth. All right, we got more on the other side. Stick and stay. It's indisputable.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive. And you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're going to do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing with #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing. And thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
Welcome back to Indisputable. We got a lot of comments. Let's get to it. Thank you all for always engaging with the show. And don't forget, stay after the show. We got Ray Actions with Ray Vanna. All right, dope stuff. Make sure you stick and stay. TYT member Curl Dragon says, "Was what a lovely surprise." Smiley face. My big homie Dave Schmidt. You supposed to be working, Dave. Hello, Dr. Richie. Keep bringing the heat, my brother. Love you. Love you back, big homie. Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon. Further proof of the cult of Trump. Jim Jones didn't just convince almost 1,000 people to drink poison. He convinced them to first make their own children drink it. That's a hell of a point. YouTube super chat, Mickey Mallory. There's no doubt that QAnon conspiracies are being used to weaponize its believers. If it can convince a man to kill his kids, what else can it do? Terrorist attack, January 6th. Overthrow of the government attempted. Trevor Watson, thank you, Trevor. Jill Wagner, hey Doc, have you seen Cullen Hoback's documentary Q, Into the Storm? It's unbelievable and a must watch for everyone. I believe he exposed who Q is and is really sad and in my mind, criminal. I have not, but I've definitely heard about it and I need to check it out. Probably this weekend. All right, Kelly O'Hara. Too many people gone thanks to QAnon, or more accurately, QAcon. I like that. They're always throwing a tizzy. It makes me dizzy. When will it stop? Very well said. I like how you put that, Kelly. Coco T. Taxpayer thievery is what it is. And we need to start talking about how we, as taxpayers, also match their retirement contributions dollar for dollar, as we are their employers. Sarah L. Yisrael, shalom, Dr. Richie, blessings to you as well. COP, the cop secret deal. Larry Love Jr., where was the DOJ all this time? I mean, really, 20 damn years. Jim Garcia, what about the standby jurors? Good point. Okay, Twitch. My friend, this is from April NP81. My friend Jose Antonio Gutierrez was 14 in 1995 and was murdered by LAPD officer Michael Falvo. He is still employed by LAPD last time I checked. So sorry to hear about your friend. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, my next story. There's a pervert cop allegedly out here in the world. Let's put a picture of this cop. His name is Donald Nunez, 66 years of age, 23 years as a police officer. He's out of Slidell, Louisiana. This officer has now been arrested for voyeurism, obscenity with a juvenile under the age of 12. Here's some details. The Slidell Police Department received a criminal complaint on Nunez on Tuesday, August 10th. That's according to the police. The department asked the Louisiana Attorney General's office to investigate the complaint, and Nunez was arrested soon after. Nunez has worked for the Slidell Police Department since 1998. He is currently on unpaid leave pending the outcome of the investigation, according to the police. Let's put his picture up again. Remember, voyeurism, indecent behavior, obscenity with a juvenile under the age of 12. It does not give us the exact age right now. Still a developing story. This is a quote from the police chief, Randy Fandel. Disgusting, sickening, and reprehensible are just a few words that come to mind. Police officers are held to a much higher standard, that's a damn lot, chief, and have the delicate job of maintaining the public's trust. When I was informed about this complaint yesterday, we did not waste any time stripping this officer of his badge and placing him under arrest. This is a black eye on us all. Hey, chief, he's been with y'all for 23 damn years. You think this 12-year-old or person under the age of 12 is his first and only victim? Do you not think this individual has utilized his position and leverage of authority in order to gain trust and access to impressionable young children while wearing that badge and uniform? Are you going to launch an investigation into his total career at your police agency? Will you now involve the federal government and other entities to make sure that every victim that he has encountered gets justice? That's what I want to hear, chief. All of this damn, well, we did the right thing when we found out we arrested him. It's a black eye on us all. No, sir, not good enough for me. Because you know good and damn well, as a criminal profiler, this is not his only victim. You know that. Waz, what are your thoughts?
You know, I'm glad you mentioned the absurdity in that statement about police officers being held to the highest standard, and we know that they're not. Oftentimes they're held to a completely different standard than normal citizens are. And the reason why it's important, it's like when you go to court and they present police statements as official statements, we're just supposed to assume that these guys are so honorable. Anything that they put in a report, anything that they put down in writing is the truth, right? As best as they could have seen it at the time. And that's always been the kind of standard for police. But we see that obviously these guys are human beings. But the only way to ensure that, they're on the up and up is to hold them accountable when they do mess up. Not brush it under the rug, not cover it up, not keep them on the force even after they have infraction after infraction after infraction. Is to ensure that, look, when you mess up, there's gonna be consequences. And in fact, for the police, it's the opposite. They're incentivized to behave recklessly because even when they do get caught, finally, oftentimes they go off scot-free because of something, the blue line or the blue wall or all of this other crazy stuff. And all it does is erode trust within the institutions that we think are supposed to be here to serve and protect us. Like, I don't know how you can see all the evidence over the years and decades of police misconduct and cover up after cover up after cover up. I don't know how any citizen can willfully have any faith in the sort of integrity of policing here in America.
That's right. And here's the reality, brother. 96% of Americans believe that police reform is necessary. Police did that to themselves. You see, people didn't do that to the police. People generally used to trust the police. They gave them more trust than they deserved. They messed up the trust. And as long as you have corrupt cops, as long as you have a culture that protects the corruption rather than exposes it and excommunicates it from the profession, you will continue to have extreme distrust between cop and community. The us and them mentality that currently exists inside of our American structure was started by them. Let's be very clear where it came from. And their inability to utilize the authority that they have to actually hold cops accountable, their inability to do so is why this problem continues to permeate in the wrong direction. We will keep holding them accountable on this show. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would.
You want to call the police on them for having a barbecue on a Sunday.
I feel free! Back off! I'm going to tell them there's an African-American man threatening my life.
I was just making sure he doesn't damage my car.
That's my husband. He's a Marine. He's not going to touch your car.
That's okay. I'm allowed to watch it. It's my car.
He's not going to touch it. That's
I literally got out of my car and he yelled at you because of a sticker that I choose to have on my car.
Just
great example for your child.
Go in the store. It is a great example that you're harassing my husband. Get back.
I'm harassing anyone.
Get back. Go in the store and stay away from my husband. Bitch.
I came here to get some groceries.
Go do your job then. Go take care of yourself.
What is your goal here? What are you doing?
Getting you away from my husband right now. It's called loyalty.
Over there.
It's called loyalty. Get away
It's
from
called
him.
you're
filming him. You're filming him, you bitch.
It's public
It's America, bitch. It's America, bitch. Go into the store. Mind your own business. He's at his vehicle. He's not at your vehicle.
Your husband's right there.
Stay away from him.
I didn't do anything. They just started harassing me for no reason.
Harassing him. You started the harassment.
I
Dude, get away from me. Get away from me. What the hell's your problem? You attacked her. You stopped her first. You lost her first. I didn't touch her.
Go away.
I'm going back to my car. I'm trying to get to my car.
That's a hot damn mess. So sad. The sticker at the center of this made up controversy says abolish ICE. This is America. Freedom of speech applies. Now, I do have an update before I get into some of the background. According to my sources, yes, that woman was eventually arrested. And the male Karen in this video has been fired from his job. Okay, according to the background, as I was walking into the store like any other day, and they were exiting with her husband having about a minute lead ahead of her, I began to film from the doors before I entered because her husband walked past me after seeing me exit my vehicle and proceeded to flip me off and yell, abolish ICE, F you little C word, okay? So you see, she's filming. She's afraid of what may happen, that someone, this man may damage her property. She did the right thing. The woman says the Karen damaged her phone and glasses, scratched her chest and back, and left her with a swollen and bruised knee. She then told me it was because of my choice in supporting BLM and the liberals. This happened to me, and I should take it as a lesson. It gets deeper. I've learned she works with disabled children, and her husband is in the military of some sort, along with being a realtor in Long Beach, Washington. Hold them accountable. Let's put up her picture again. The Karen. That's old school Karen right there. She's been training Karens for a long time. And when she can't train a Karen, she feels like she's empowered to slap a Karen, to hit a Karen, okay? Because the Karen would not fit her particular philosophical narrative about this country. Now, yes, this is America, which means freedoms are attached, or at least should be. But see, you don't really want to be in America. You're not a real patriot. You're using patriotism and covering it with white nationalism, white supremacy. That's it. Okay, a Big Waz, you saw the whole thing, man. You seem to be in shock over there.
Yeah, I always like to react to these videos in real time because it's just crazy that people leave their house and think, you can complain about the bumper sticker on a stranger's car, and you hit the nail right on the head. Oftentimes when these people are invoking America into their arguments, they're invoking an imagined America, not America as it actually is, the melting pot of a bunch of different cultures, belief systems, religions, et cetera, et cetera. They're thinking of America as they would wish it to be, which is just white people doing whatever the hell they want to do, whenever the hell they want to do it. That's obvious what this lady was talking about when she said, this is America. Because it's like, yeah, this is America. I can have whatever bumper sticker I want. Yeah, and I can express a belief, that ICE is a ridiculous use of government power and government resources, that there isn't some huge issue at our border, and that I don't believe in what they do, right? I don't believe in snatching kids from their families or detention / concentration camps for people, refugees who have arrived here from places in the world that we have as an American government a huge hand in destabilizing.
That's right.
Right? Like it's it's just ridiculous that this woman would be so violent because somebody opposes ICE. Imagine if this lady said she didn't like apple pie or something.
Right. Once again, put up this woman's picture one more time. Put up a picture real quick. Her full name is Mo Darling McLeod, 57 years of age, was arrested on charges of felony assault, disorderly conduct, and criminal mischief. Should have also been arrested for child abuse for what she exposed that young child to. All right, we got more on the other side. It's Indisputable. Stick and stay.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like. tyt.com/join and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitzing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream,
but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members.
Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. Referred to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richie. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? It was the white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it though.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let me read some of these viewer comments. They are coming in hot and heavy. Okay, Electric Miscellanea says, I'm torn. I really wish there were fewer Karens in the world. But on the other hand, I really love I wish a Karen would. And Electric, you're gonna love this too. The I wish a Karen would t-shirts are closer than ever, okay? Would it not be amazing if one day somebody with an I wish a Karen would t-shirt encounters an actual Karen that we play on the segment I wish a Karen would? Wow. Okay, YouTube super chat. Reyes Guerra. Purging bad cops from the force is a necessary check on negligent police leadership and culture of unaccountability. Yep. Omega Shinron Dragon. Over here in NYC, we have to put up with a leaving Mayor de Blasio have a park destroyed for a higher levy while being helped by our city council, Carlina Rivera, who are all gentrification friendly. Breeze, how many lives did that 66-year-old cop ruin? The roots are rotten, damn right. Schwa Enigma, the Karen looks like what I thought all the discussed witches looked like from the classic witches children book, square feet and all. Made money in the building. My Oakland hood would have got to whooping on that lady. I would have given her a reason to complain. You wanna get active? We're gonna get active. All right, LaSalle Lamb, thank you, LaSalle. Selena Anthony. I really wish TYT would cover the craziness David Wilcock feeds his followers. He is an absolute grifter, okay? Twitch, Mama Misa, I'm shooketh. I'm walking distance to Slidell. I have young daughters. My stomach is inside out. You need to check with them. You need to call Slidell and figure out what they're gonna do about this guy and his history. Okay, we got time for one more. RC Tycoon 13. Send them to Florida so then they can reenact Highlander. Damn. Talking about the Karens of the world. There can be only one. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, truly horrific. A nurse has literally been trying to kill people. A nurse in Germany with anti-vax views injected thousands of at-risk patients with saline instead of COVID. I kid you not. This is real. The nurse, who has still not yet been publicly identified, injected saline as a placebo in 8,600 people who thought they were getting vaccinated against COVID-19. Police investigators have said that she had aired skeptical views about vaccines in social media posts made prior to her arrest. Damn it, we need to know who this woman is. We need to know who this woman is. I will stay on top of it until we do. Authorities said the nurse was able to access the vials because she was responsible for preparing the vaccines and syringes. Those who were inoculated when the suspected switch took place were all over the age of 70. High-risk individuals, all over the age of 70. Authorities are now sending notices to the 8,600 people who thought they were receiving the COVID vaccine and are advising them to get another shot. Let's hope they're alive. Let's hope they are alive. Why would you not release the information of this person? Why? Okay, this is not the first time an incident like this took place. A similar scandal unfolded in India last month. Thousands paid to receive the COVID-19 vaccine at a vaccination camp, but instead they were given shots of saline solution. Authorities arrested 14 people, alleging they gave around 4,000 people fake or expired vaccines and collected thousands of dollars in the process. There's more. In June, a Wisconsin pharmacist who purposely sabotaged hundreds of COVID-19 vaccine doses, believing them to be unsafe, was sentenced to 3 years in prison. The hell, that's it? 3 years. This to me is akin to murder when you do things like this. And you're in a position of public trust, which means you are supposed to be held to a higher standard of responsibility. That's how it works in this country. Big Waz, what are your thoughts here?
Man, again, people in positions that we're vulnerable, right? In the sense that they're supposed to be helping us, and we grant them the authority to like influence our bodies, our health. This stuff it's serious business, right? And I'm just confused by people who want to impose their own beliefs on others. You can go on Facebook and go on Instagram and rant and rave and do whatever you want, but if you get paid to perform a job function, and these people have opted into a vaccine that they believe is going to help them stay alive longer and protect them from a deadly virus, right, in the midst of a global pandemic, the likes of which we haven't seen since, bubonic plague and the Spanish flu. The idea that this woman would take matters into her own hands to quote unquote protect them from a vaccine is just absurd. And yeah, I would hope that she is prosecuted to the full extent of the law, because this is criminal, it's immoral, it's just horrible stuff. And yeah, I would like to see her get made an example of. If you work in the healthcare field and you don't believe in vaccines, that's your prerogative. But it's not on you to impose your beliefs on the others who are coming to you for help and shielding themselves from, the ravages of this virus.
There you go, brother. And see, that's the point right there. Look at the irony of this. You have individuals like this nurse and others who would proclaim that they are exercising their independence. They would proclaim that they are somehow people of complete integrity because of what they believe. But look at what they're literally doing. They are taking away your independence, your ability, your right to choose. They're making a choice for you. And if they have that much damn integrity, if they're doing this because of what they personally believe, if they have that much integrity, don't lie. Don't manipulate, quit your job. Quit your job. Go full-time anti-vaxxer and let people know exactly what you believe. But tricking people, lying to people, exercising in a way that is unethical, you have absolutely no moral ground at all, period. Somebody else who has no moral ground, Nazi saluting man arrested in racist attack, wanted to kill 60 to 70 people. This is a guy in Florida. He's facing numerous charges after attacking someone because of his race and admitting that he wanted to plan a mass shooting. His name is Jordan Patrick Leahy. Got into a road rage incident after sideswiping another man's vehicle, making a Nazi salute and pretending to shoot the victim. Deputies said that all of this occurred while he was under the influence of alcohol. Remember, we talked about that liquid courage, okay? Let's put a picture up again of this guy. I want people to get a good look at him, okay? After crashing, Leahy stopped his vehicle at an intersection, exited the vehicle, and approached the victim aggressively. Leahy then punched the victim in the chest before getting overpowered, with the victim subduing Leahy with a submission hold. When deputies got there, Leahy told them he got out, threw the Nazi salute, and wanted to fight a random colored person. His word. He also told the deputies to get people of color under control, calling them savage animals and yelling slurs at the victim and the witness. There's more. After being taken into custody, Leahy told deputies that he wanted to shoot 60 to 70 people in the face and then kill himself by a gunshot to the neck. Leahy said killing people would be the most fulfilling thing he would experience in life, and that society needs to be concerned about how easy it would be for him to cause a mass shooting. He now faces charges for DUI involving property damage, threatening communications, threatening a mass shooting, and felony battery. Okay, you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? Put his picture up again. That means he'll be out by next week. That's what that means. You understand? He'll be out very soon. Okay? And he actually had a point. He said authorities need to be concerned about how a person like him is able to commit a mass shooting with ease, basically. He was right about that point. And authorities are not as concerned as they should be. We've heard from DOJ officials, former officials, who say, we don't know why we continue to treat white supremacists differently, as if they are not as dangerous as they are. You even had a federal judge who said, why are we being so light on the insurrectionists? Taxpayers are paying more money for their damage than they are. Big Waz, what are your thoughts here?
It's crazy to me too. obviously, you and I don't even need to get into the ridiculous nature of these people's beliefs, right? That if you were a Nazi or a neo-Confederate or skinhead, whatever you want to call yourself, there's no merits to any of their beliefs. It's racist, it's ignorant, it's bigoted, it's horrible, abhorrent, whatever. To me, man, I'm like, this is America. We used to like winners in this country. The Nazis got their butts handed to them in World War II. The Confederates lost. You lost. You got destroyed in the Civil War. The idea that these guys are worshiping these losers as Americans, this is just societal decay, Dr. Richie. We used to want to be on the side of the victors. Now these guys worship utter failures and losers. It's sad, sad, sad to see.
Man, you made a remarkable point because you're right. Everybody they identify with, they are losers. Listen, I'm being very technical about the word here. They literally lost whatever movement they were a part of. That's an excellent point. But once again, it comes down to a core value structure. They're connecting to these failed movements, to these losers, because they hold a values core. They share sentiment. They share a belief system. Now, I'm glad that the belief system is not mainstream, but damn, man, is it? When we say it's not mainstream, you have to remember, you still got damn near half of the Republicans believing that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. You have white supremacists who are in mainstream government now, governing because thousands and thousands of people voted for them, and they're continuing to be just as racist as they were when they were campaigning. So is it mainstream or not? I think it's starting to become mainstream again, and that's why we have to keep fighting against it. Last words, brother.
And even if it's not completely mainstream, I think it's hard to argue with the idea that what is mainstream is, look, I'm not a neo-Nazi or neo-Confederate or a skinhead, but they kind of have a point. Like even if people who don't identify with those thought systems as we label them neo-Nazi, but again, if you could watch Donald Trump call Mexican immigrants and migrant workers mostly mostly rapists, mostly drug dealers, mostly criminals, and you could say, well, I don't know that that's the truth, but there's kind of some merits to that. Then that, by definition, the thought, beliefs, and systems of neo-Nazis and neo-Confederates is mainstream, right? Like even if people don't self-identify with those groups, like the overriding principles of those hate groups are stuff that a lot of Americans identify with, which is sad, obviously.
Brother, always a pleasure having you on Indisputable. Tell people quickly, how can they follow you, check out your show?
Yes, please tune into Wozniak on the TYT Twitch stream. We're on vacation for the next few weeks, but we'll be back better than ever in September. So check that out. Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Of course, you can read my stuff on The Ringer, listen to The Ringer NBA show for my decent NBA hot takes. And then Nando Vila, my brother, also a TYT contributor. We do a podcast called The Woke Bros. Please check that out. We drop those every single Thursday. Today we dropped an episode centered on Andrew Cuomo's disgraced fall from power. So please go check that out.
Thank you, big homie. Always a pleasure, brother. It's
of course, anytime. Appreciate you guys.
I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think my dad's Oldsmobile. And and I parked it in a place where there was 2 cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was an even worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all 3 cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh and this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the 3rd car, okay? And I got stuck. I didn't know how to get out. Like, I went, okay, this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, A, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know.
Wow, there's a B?
Yeah, I'm like this, I hit 3 cars, I don't know. So you guys gotta come help me, okay? Okay, so 1, my bad, really sorry about that. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't wanna keep hitting your cars and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
Now baby, move that fat, baby, move that fat.
Hi, I'm Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Hi, Brett Ehrlich here. According to EPA head Scott Pruitt, climate change is not happening. He cited a meme on Facebook he saw. When pressed to back up this source, he said it must be accurate because the watermark said it was made by a scientist. So, your move, Truth.
Do all of you know the Young Turks?
An outlet like yourself that are willing to cover this story from the very beginning and that weren't afraid to say, hey, this is something that is legitimate.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
Brent Welder is very progressive Democrat. He's a just Democrat. In fact, uncorrupted, not going to take big corporate PAC money. When did you start watching this show and when did you become a member?
So I've been watching for 10 years, an active viewer, but also more importantly, getting out there with causes like Wolfpack.
By the end of our campaign, we had organized about 22,000 individual contributions with an average about $27 a piece. And those initial people were a lot of TYT supporters as well.
In looking at the world in a very different way than corporate media does.
It takes those early people who believe that can really be the seeds of this movement, and that has been the Young Turks.
Thank you, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks.
Thank you to TYT and all the progressives around the country that have our backs.
You know, the first and only interviews that we had tonight to be with the Young Turks as well, because you guys have been here from the very beginning, and that's what this night is all about.
And I thank Cenk very much for the very good work that he does.
Thank you so much for all in this together, and the people are so powerful, and we're gonna get it done.
Thank you for your constant support.
It's a pleasure to be with rebels. I like that.
For all of the help that you've given to the Just Democrats, to Wolfpack, to help fellow progressives, thank you guys, to all the Young Turks members that make it possible.
Hey, this is Edwin. Most of you might recognize me, well, not me, mostly my laugh from the main show.
I mean, it's gonna be hard to get the Uygur maneuver on him.
And today, my talent is Rubik's Cubes. You gotta forgive me, it's been at least 5 years since I've competed. So that's why I'm actually going pretty slow. Watch this.
All right, let me get to some of these viewer comments. Okay, TYT member Eclectic Miscellaneous says, I wish a Karen Wood t-shirts are on the way. That would be hilarious if Dr. Richie's scenario comes true. With a Karen being encountered by someone wearing the I wish a Karen Wood t-shirt, it would probably go viral. No, it would go viral, okay? Warlock says, I don't believe, I'm saying this, but the Indian COVID scheme is better than the German one. They were just greedy. That nurse knowingly, purposefully, directly imperiled the lives of others. Yeah. Mickey C, the silver-haired dragon. Since the man was admittedly a fascist, I'm sure he'll get 6 months in jail and will be allowed to own a gun when he gets out. That's kind of how it goes, right? All right, super chat. Sharon Costello. Anybody notice that the husband of the last Karen tore a shopping cart out of the hands of the lady standing behind Karen? Non-human humanist, excuse me. ACC German Press, the nurse is under suspicion, but hard evidence is missing and district attorney can't yet prosecute. They are still investigating. Damn shame. David Morris, this pandemic has exposed all that is wrong with people and is not a pretty sight. Yep. Laura Estrada, I love Waz. His comments are so simple, yet so straightforward to the point. I always have enjoyed him when he is on TYT. Thank you for that, Laura. He's gone, but he definitely feels your spirit. He does a great job. All right. Kinsey Immortal, my Trump-loving cousin tells me the other day, we need to let them talk. The crazy will burn itself out. I laughed so hard. Wow. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please remember, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of the planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable. Welcome to the bullpen. In the bullpen today, I have Bryson Gray, Christian conservative artist, producer, and personality. Bryson, welcome to Indisputable. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, man. So we talked a little bit about this before the show. And I mentioned to you that I'm actually good friends with Lecrae, who's a Christian artist. And I asked you, since you are a Christian entertainer or Christian artist yourself, had you had any contact with Lecrae? And you said to me that he's kind of lukewarm for you. And you mean that in the context of his faith belief, right?
Yeah, and me and him have had situations because I've tried to contact him. I contacted him privately before, but he denies the word of God in front of man, which is disgusting in my opinion.
Got you. You are a big anti-abortion guy, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I assume you take that from your biblical principles or the values you have received from the Bible.
Starts with that, but it's really just common sense. Even if you don't believe in the Bible, it should be common sense to be against abortion.
Okay, so let me ask you this: are you for war?
Am I for war?
Correct.
I'm against war. Take our troops out of pretty much all of these countries to stop messing with other countries.
That actually has some intellectual integrity. Are you also anti-death penalty?
I'm becoming that way. So sometimes I struggle with it because emotionally, when you see somebody messing with little kids and stuff of that nature, you want to say, I don't like that. But just to be clear, when I talk about pro-life, I'm talking about abortions, period. So I'm referring to abortion.
Well, that's the context that you would like it to only apply to. But if you utilize the phraseology pro-life, well, now I need to understand, how do you consider life in different contexts? For example, if you are a pro-life person, then I would expect you to also be pro-funding for adoption centers or pro-funding for community homes that deal with children. I was a foster child myself. So I would imagine if you're pro-life, you're also pro-life for those that are outside of the womb, is my point, right? Outside of the womb.
Well, you want to have a conversation about outside the womb, but I'm specifically dealing with inside of the womb. So I'm dealing with abortion specifically. I'm anti-abortion. It should be illegal. Very simple.
Okay, because you believe life begins at conception?
Yes, I believe the definition of a cell is the smallest form of life by definition in biology. So then if you apply that to a human, we're talking about a human cell. So then if that's human life and you're taking it away, then obviously you shouldn't be able to do that.
Let me be graphic with you. Does sperm have a cell?
Yes.
Is that a human being?
No, I know. That's what I said, the smallest form of life. So if you talk about a human cell, when a sperm goes into the egg and Okay, I'm not going through that. We all know what happens. And then when it starts growing, obviously it's doing that. And that's why you here, that's why I'm here. That's why everybody's here right now, is because of that right there. So let's not play these little weird games. We know exactly.
We're not playing games, brother. Okay. We're having an open conversation. Yeah. Because if your faith belief informs you of your stance on a woman's right to choose, let's be okay with challenging the conversation. And I will let you speak and I'll speak. So let me pose this question to you. When we talk about life, we're not talking about biological function, because there's a lot of biological function. We can spit on the ground and there's biology in the spit. You're not trying to save the spit, brother. So we're not talking about biological function. We're talking about a soul being placed inside of the body and a soul being present inside of the womb. That's what we're really talking about, correct? That's what makes it life.
No, I made what I said very specific. That's why I said when somebody releases a sperm and it comes with the egg and it starts creating life, when that come together and life starts growing, period. That's a human cell. So the fact that you're taking that away, and let's not act like that's when most abortions happen. Most abortions happen later than that, which is more disgusting. So later we start doing that is murder. And not only it should be simply illegal. No, I don't want no exceptions.
All right, so what about in cases of rape?
No exceptions.
In cases of molestation?
No exceptions.
In cases of incest?
No exceptions.
Now, let me go back to your ideology about where life begins. We can all agree that in the story of Adam and Eve, or Ahadal, that Adam was a biological entity first. And this biology that had the format of life, cells were functioning. There was a biological process, because according to the text that you say informs your belief on abortion, God created Adam, or God created man. So now you have your biology. But man did not become living, brother, which means Adam, as a biological entity, according to the scripture, was not living until something happened to Adam. What happened to Adam that made him a living soul?
I know what you're about to say. God breathed breath into him, but my answer is that God knew you before the womb, before you was in the womb.
Okay, so you answered the question that in the scripture that you base your opinion on, or base your faith value on, that Adam was actually a biological creature, a biological presence that had the function of life. However, scripture says that is not what made him living. He did not become living until there was a respiratory function, until God breathed into Adam, and the Bible says Adam thus became a living soul. So that means that Adam can exist biologically first without actually being living second.
There's a huge problem with this comparison you're using. The huge problem is Adam wasn't born of a woman. He was the first man created by God. And then the woman Eve was created from the rib. That's why I brought up the other scripture that said, I knew you even before you was in the womb. And that's quite simple. One of the things God hates is a shedding of innocent blood.
Well, let's go back to that. And I appreciate the conversation, brother. You and I disagree totally on the concept here, but I appreciate the open conversation. Now, the scripture you just mentioned is actually in Jeremiah 1. And God is specifically talking about Jeremiah the prophet. And the wording is, before you were in the womb of your mother, I knew you, I ordained you a prophet unto the nation. So just as you utilize the scripture in the book of Genesis to apply to a one-time situation, why do you not use the scripture in Jeremiah to apply specifically as it is stated to a one-time situation?
I gave you another scripture, you ignored it.
Okay, what was the other one? Where is it at?
I said one of the 6 things God hates is the shedding of innocent blood.
Well, we understand that, brother. And once again, that is in reference to life. And we've already established that you can have biology without having life. That's according to the text that you read in Genesis.
Are babies in a womb as they're growing? Is that not life?
I do not believe they are. No, I do not believe that's a living soul. Sir, you asked me, hold on, brother. You asked me a question. The answer to your question is, I do not believe an embryo is a living soul until there is a respiratory function. That's my belief. Your belief can be different than mine.
So as they're growing and as they're getting basically food from the mother and getting everything from the mother, as so they can grow, you're telling me that is not a living thing?
No, I do not believe that's a living soul. So I do believe it has the biology or the biological processes of life, just as your spit does or other elements connected to your body. But I do not believe it is an actual living soul. That is what I believe. Yes. Let me take you to a policy. You do realize,
just real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, when you use a spit, it's very interesting, and you're using the term "living soul" instead, soul instead of life. I see why you're using that. But we talk about spit. Spit is a totally different ballgame because a spit is not growing. It's not. It's not growing. It's not getting bigger. It's not learning how to do things. It's not functioning that way. Because spit is obviously not life.
I got you, brother. And you have your belief, and I respect your belief and your value system. So you're a guy, you want to see less abortions happen in America. Do you support Republicans politically?
I'm a conservative. Republicans are starting to go towards further left, so they have pissed me off as of late.
But you do support conservatives that are, I guess, anti-abortion, right? Or anti-woman's right to choose. You support them.
I support that specific policy.
Okay, let me read to you some actual data. Now, this is not a projection. This is what has already happened. During the last 30 years, that's a long time, brother. The most dramatic decrease in abortion rates in America has happened under Democratic presidents, not Republican presidents. Republican or conservative presidents have either kept it the same or increased the number of actual abortions in the United States. Let me read some stats. Per 1,000 women, Reagan from 1981 to 1989 had the number at 24 per 1,000. This was rates per every 1,000 women, according to the CDC. H.W. Bush had it at 24, which kept it steady. Clinton had it at 16.2, which dropped it. Bush had it at 16 as well. And then President Obama gets in and he dramatically decreases it to 11. All right, so the most dramatic and the only decreases of actual abortion rates in the United States of America happened under Democratic presidents, which would mean if you're considering saving more lives, if you believe that abortions or abortion is murder, then you have to consider voting for a Democrat and not a Republican, because under conservatives, the abortion rate actually increases, and under Democrats, it actually decreases.
Well, none of them statutes you brought up affects me at all, because like I've made clear multiple times, I want it illegal, meaning it shouldn't happen, period. So them stats has no effect on me.
All right, you do realize how ridiculous it sounds when you say you want a person who was raped to be forced to have a child. You want a girl, a child who was molested to be forced to have a baby. You realize how dumb as hell that sounds, right?
Well, it wasn't the baby that raped that person, so I don't think that's an exception.
Say that again.
The baby that's growing inside of you didn't rape you, didn't molest you. The man hopefully is in jail and or dead. But
wait a minute. So you want that person punished for taking away the choice of another individual, but you don't want that individual to have a choice as it relates to carrying the embryo into term?
No, incorrect. I want that person to be punished for raping and or molesting. I know a lot of times people try to use blanket terms like a choice, so you can use that in another place. But no, I'm specifically talking about raping and molesting because you said those words.
This is fascinating. So, and what's interesting, Bryson, is that there's a policy, or at least it existed temporarily in the state of Alabama. Alabama passed a law, and I'm sure you were very happy about this law until the court overturned it, that said even in cases of rape, abortion would still be illegal in Alabama. That law did get overturned, but keep in mind, it did get passed. And literally in Alabama, a person would get more time for aborting the fetus than what the rapist would get for raping the woman. Does that make sense to you?
No, I don't agree with that last aspect. Okay. Obviously, the person that raped the woman needs to get life. Any person that rapes somebody should get life in prison. But I do like the fact that they did that law outside of that last part.
Do you have children?
No, but I will. I have 3 siblings.
You have sisters?
I have a little sister, correct.
You ever thought if somebody raped your little sister, you wouldn't want her to have the child of the rapist? Or at least have her?
No, my sister, she will have the child.
Because you will force her to have it?
Nope, because she was a Bible-believing Christian like me, and she doesn't believe in abortion.
So if your sister, God forbid, was raped,
we can talk to her. She's upstairs.
You would, well, I can have on the show another time. I'm talking to you today.
Okay.
You would counsel her to not have an abortion, but to in fact have the child of the rapist.
I already know she would have it, but I will tell her you better not get no abortion. All 3, I was like, do not get no abortion. I tell everybody that who even thinks about having an abortion. I talk to people in my DMs sometimes think about having an abortion, but it's never really based on rape. We argue on something that's very rare. The majority of cases is convenience. Women just want convenience because women want to be out here having sex with who knows what, when no, and who nobody knows, and then they want to get an abortion. So it's usually out of convenience, but you haven't brought that up once.
And that's because women have talked to you and told you this?
It's just per statistics. Every statistics, rape is like less than 2% of abortions.
Why do you think the number of abortions actually decreases under Democrats and typically increases or stays the same under Republicans? Why do you think that is?
Genuinely, I do not know. But what I
care?
No, because I want it to be illegal. So what I do know is,
so you don't care about the actual fetuses or the embryo. You don't care about that. You just care about this one damn law. You don't care about the actual preserving of life. You don't care what the number is. You just care about this one issue that is a law that you want to see passed. You don't care what the actual numbers are.
Incorrect, sir. I'm not saying it's not a positive if abortions were decreased, but what I do know, and the reason I said I don't care, what I do know is if it was illegal, them numbers would decrease significantly because you would have to take a risk to go get an abortion illegally.
That's another untrue statement.
So many statistics
what you will have, well, we do have some stats of illegal abortions that led to the death of the mother. Because they were utilizing clothes hangers and people created a black market system so that you can go and seek these abortions. The bottom line is, brother, that women have had this choice legally or illegally, and instead of focusing on the policy that you're trying to push, which is completely adversarial to any common sense known to man, to push that kind of ideology without respecting a woman's right to choose, especially in situations that are egregious as rape, brother, I'm disappointed.
But I do believe in a woman's right to choose. Because in most cases, it's convenience. She can make that choice in the bedroom, just like she make every other choice in her life. So once you make that choice in the bedroom, you have to deal with, you're a grown adult woman in most cases. You need to deal with what you just did. So you can't just get rid of your responsibilities and take away a life because of you convenience. Stop being a little thought.
That's what they are to you, their thoughts to you.
Yeah, promiscuous women, correct.
Yeah, you got a woman?
Yes, I have a girlfriend, yep.
Okay, and you don't have children?
No, but just real quick, my girlfriend was actually adopted at 2 years old, and she was raised by wonderful parents, which is another reason why I'm very pro-life. I was already pro-life, but just that alone, and she's a very intelligent woman, and her mother is there for that.
I'm glad you said that. I was a foster child myself. Do you advocate for stronger policies to make sure foster children have access to higher education, to opportunities in the marketplace, job training skills, etc.? Do you advocate for that?
Job training skills, yes. I'm not a fan of these universities. I think people need to homeschool their kids.
Oh, that's a shock. You're not a fan of college. Okay, that's a shock.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, just school period, not just college. It's public school system, private school system. No matter what it is, all they're doing is indoctrinating our children. That's why a lot of liberals, they claim that they didn't become liberals until they left college.
I got you, man. That's just, I mean, this has been, I don't know, interesting. I can say that. So are you a big MAGA guy? Are you a Trumpite?
I'm not gonna talk about Trump bite because I'm God first, obviously. But I do support Trump. But right now I'm still focused on 2020, not really worried about 2024. I'm surprised we didn't get to the LGBT stuff.
But you know, wait a minute, it's 2021 though, brother.
Yeah, the election was obviously stolen, in my opinion. I thought we have. Well, you're laughing, but why?
Yeah, I'm laughing at you. You're absolutely correct. You called that. That's the first true thing you said on this show.
Why are they trying to block audits?
Okay, brother. What's really interesting about all of this is that the places that are having audits, the audits are not being blocked. Georgia has had multiple audits. Arkansas has had multiple audits. A lot of states had audits. But you also have judges that were appointed by Donald Trump who said to these cases of election fraud, these are frivolous cases. So you mean to tell me that judges appointed by Trump himself decided to engage in a massive conspiracy to steal the election from Donald Trump? And this included not only judges, but also all of the Republican governors, all of the White House staff, and including Mike Pence himself. You think it was that kind of massive cover up, correct?
Well, if you look into what the judges he appointed did, and granted, I do agree with you that in my opinion, Trump sometimes his judgment of character is a little off. But
a little off?
Yeah, but the judges he appointed, nobody did even give a real investigation into the cases. And like I said, I was surprised we didn't. I mean, it's true. I'm surprised we didn't get to the LGBT stuff because you'll be more shocked at my views on that.
Okay. What's your, and we got like 2 minutes, man. You wanted to say something about LGBTQ rights?
Well, and censorship, we didn't get to that. But of course, I want same-sex marriage illegal, common sense. But also as far as censorship, social media companies, especially the ones that are publicly traded, shouldn't have these like these Section 230 immunity things surrounding them. Because my music just got banned on some of the biggest platforms in the country as far as Spotify and SoundCloud. Yeah. And how can you ban my music but still have music about murder? And
let me tell you why private companies can do that, and it is not antithetical to the Constitution. Your freedom of speech is a freedom that does have restrictions. Now remember, your freedom of speech basically says the government cannot do anything to intrude on that freedom, right? Or penalize you for having said freedom when you exercise that freedom. But private companies, for example, TYT is a private company. Indisputable is a show at this private company. If I wanted you to be off my show, I could just cut your mic. I haven't violated your constitutional rights. Maybe I've offended you, brother, but I have not violated your constitutional rights. So when you make a constitutional argument,
I didn't,
because of a private company, what they decide to do with your music, that doesn't equate. It's not a constitutional issue.
I did. You brought up Constitution. I said nothing about the Constitution.
So you're just saying private companies should do what you want them to do?
No, incorrect. But if you're gonna ban my music, okay, you have to ban other music similar to that.
Like, well, they don't have to, brother. They don't.
And this is where we get into the thing.
They're not Christians like you, brother.
Oh no. And now this is the argument. Now my argument is discrimination, right? Y'all like that word?
Discrimination. I got it.
But it is discrimination. I can prove it's discrimination by emails, and I can pull up 1,000 popular songs.
And they're discriminating against your lyrics?
Yes, they are.
Got you, man. All right.
Discriminate against my belief system, correct?
Got you, man. Well, you continue that fight, brother. Do you? All right. I appreciate you being on Indisputable. Thank you, sir.